One in the middle of the burning battlefield, robed cultists chanted with mad joy. They threw their hands upward as bizarre creatures gathered around a glowing pink crystal, shrieking in worship, but this dark celebration was about to end. A sharp blade flashed, slicing through the ugly monsters. No warning, no mercy, the ruthless warrior pressed his attack. The brave sword lord, Ray Chan, turned back to face his trembling allies. He shouted with absolute confidence, "Follow me, I will carve us a path." Beside him, the fearless grave guardian, Georg Bilmer, slammed his heavy staff down. He charged forward atop a massive bone dinosaur, 20 meters from the action. There another guild stood ready, led by a striking, blue-eyed girl. Maria Georger clenched her fist. "We have to stop this ritual." But it was already too late. A glowing plus symbol appeared on the 12th floor. The system flashed notifications before every hunter, announcing a brand new target for them. They froze. The exhausted fighters watched in tense silence, bracing for the shift. But trust me, none of them were prepared for the nightmare that was coming. A massive, terrifying seasonal boss blocked their path, wielding two giant dark swords. Forged from dark steel, these weapons belonged to the dreadful Lord of the Plague. His presence radiated pure dread, and his cold gaze paralyzed everyone nearby. One effortless swing, the dark giant sent a dozen armored knights flying backward. They never even had a chance to react before the system issued their target. Defeat the seasonal boss to clear the raid, but this was no ordinary monster. Within just a few minutes, the battlefield turned into an absolute bloodbath. Dozens of wounded hunters choked on toxic slime, gasping as they slowly bled out. The sudden, massive losses were hard to accept, but these men were doomed. There was no time to grieve. Brave Maria Georger rallied her remaining squad. They charged ahead together, striking at the massive plague lord from all sides. Maria pushed forward with everything she had, but her attacks barely scratched him. Nearby, Ray Chan stood frozen, his mind completely shattered by the overwhelming despair. Trembling, fighting back tears of sheer panic, the proud swordsman broke down. He began to mutter softly, desperately trying to summon a shred of courage. Suddenly, the broken guild leader panicked, dropped his weapon, and fled the battlefield screaming that he did not want to die, utterly shocking his allies. The cold-blooded plague lord watched him, mockingly calling him a foolish, fragile mort, who had run straight towards certain death without even attempting to fight back. The monster was actually quite curious where this pathetic coward thought he could hide. In a flash, the monster hurled a massive, rusted spear directly at him. It flew with deadly speed, but just before impact, a dark figure intercepted the blow. Clad in midnight black armor, this mysterious new warrior easily deflected the lethal weapon. The stunned onlookers gasped in relief, realizing their salvation had finally arrived. It was the legendary King of Heroes, standing calm and completely unbothered. He locked eyes with the Plague Lord, calculating the fastest way to end him. With absolute composure, the young hero tightened his grip and lunged straight forward. He charged like absolute lightning, refusing to hesitate or slow down for a second. But the confident enemy was ready, patiently waiting for the perfect counter-opening. Focusing every ounce of his power, the fearless youth swung his glowing blue blade. With all his might, the young warrior delivered a devastating strike. He watched closely. The fearsome Lord of the Plague smiled. He smirked slightly, realizing victory was finally within his grasp. Suddenly, both enemies leaped high, intending to destroy each other. Mid-flight, a sharp green explosion suddenly erupted and lit up the sky. The green flash alarmed the nearby fighters, leaving Maria Jaeger deeply worried. She feared Can Yooseong was in grave danger, but had no way to help. The Plague Lord mocked the foolish king, calling him the doomed hope of humanity. He claimed the hero would drown in an ocean of rot. With a malicious sneer, the seasonal boss added that nobody would save the hero. Confident in his victory, the boss gloated, but watch what happens next. Instead, the brave warrior suddenly muttered that he could not reveal his true strength. Grinning, the hero realized he no longer had to worry about hiding his skills. The Lord hesitated. Suddenly, a massive blast shook the air. A brilliant blue light exploded, completely blinding the panicked and alarmed Lord. He stared in disbelief. Can Yooseong had targeted the crystal. Shattering the pink crystal forced the entire event to stop. The fighters covered their faces as violent winds swept hard against them. They stood firm, stunned. Georg Bilmer stared in shock. Neither he nor his ninja companion could believe their eyes. Slowly they realized they had won. What a massive relief. Before them stood a calm Kan Yooseong, examining the blue crystal. As cheers erupted, the system declared the plague season over. The long era of the Plague Lord finally concluded. The top 10 elite players on the leaderboard received a rare hero artifact, while others got random gear. But the Slayer received something far more legendary. He obtained the Black Death equipment and the Lord Slayer title. Suddenly, the exhausted young king collapsed, terrifying his allies. Closing his eyes, he whispered in a quiet voice that their world was safe. They bought another year of survival, sometime later at headquarters. Everyone praised the fearless warrior, the hero of the tower. They spoke of Kan Yooseong, the hero who reached the top. Sitting there in a sharp business suit, he looked cool but felt incredibly awkward. Meanwhile, a little girl watched the news, holding his figurine. She cheered happily, pointing out that her king was on TV. Her parents smiled warmly at her excitement across the globe. Admiring fans celebrated the hero, even selling shirts with his face. At the press conference, the host invited the young man forward. He wanted him to say a few words as the representative of all gathered heroes. The quiet hero hated the attention. He remained completely silent. Suddenly, a gentle hand nudged his shoulder. An anxious and excited Maria Jaeger whispered for Kan Yooseong to say something polite, even if he did not want to. She begged him quietly, reminding him that millions were watching them. She wanted no embarrassment on live television. The elite fighters sat inside the massive United Nations Geneva Forum for this grand event. The host eagerly asked the young king to describe how he risked his life. He made history by saving the world, but talk of heroism sounded utterly ridiculous to Kanu. Kanu pulled the microphone closer. He was completely fearless on stage. His victory was strictly for cash. The shocked crowd stood there completely speechless. They broke out in a cold sweat, Maria watching from the sidelines. Nearly fainted, holding her breath as she realized their entire reputation was now ruined. But Kanu was not done, not even close. He prepared to say more. He believed in complete honesty, no matter how harsh it sounded. So he declared that besides cold hard cash, absolutely nothing else interested him. And that was the truth. Years ago, their world had suddenly transformed into a seasonal game. Each season brought a brand new difficulty level. Massive towers began rising from the ground. They popped up everywhere, completely dwarfing the sky. Terrified citizens stared in absolute shock, helpless against the bizarre phenomenon. Before long, bloodthirsty monsters began pouring out of those massive structures. They did not hesitate. Instantly, they launched a brutal onslaught. These creatures slaughtered anyone in sight, leaving absolutely zero chance of survival. A massive goblin stepped forward, a heavy axe resting on its shoulder. It felt like the literal end of days. Humanity was entirely out of options. Panicked crowds fled in every direction, but one crying girl tripped and fell. Paralyzed by sheer terror, she stared up at her oncoming doom. And you won't believe who stepped up to save the day. With a single, devastating swing of his sword, Kanu severed the giant goblin's arm. That marked the sudden rise of players, ready to finally fight back. They refused to tolerate the slaughter, hunting down these vile creatures. Brave warriors protected innocent civilians, stepping in whenever help was needed. They constructed powerful defensive barriers that the monsters simply could not shatter. This drove the beasts absolutely wild. From then on, the world played by new rules. Humanity fought back every single day against the endless waves of invaders. But stopping these constant monster raids required a specific strategy. The players realized they had to clear the towers at strict intervals. This realization turned these superpowered warriors into the ultimate protectors. Clear after clear, they became the highly celebrated heroes of a brand new era. And Kanu, the savior of their world, had just shocked everyone. Not gonna lie, declaring he only cared about money is a total power move. Meanwhile, he was just chilling at his computer, rewatching his own press conference. He had literally told the crowd to buy his official merchandise and posters. Scrolling through the online comments, he wondered if his bluntness was a bit too much. The local gaming community had gathered on a massive online forum. This site became the go-to hub for sharing raid info and trading gear. Kanu was genuinely surprised to see that someone had already recognized him. He sat there utterly puzzled as to how they figured out his identity. An eager reporter begged Kanu to let him join his squad for the next season. The guy even promised to wait right outside his apartment building on the season's opening day. Curious, Kanu immediately stepped out onto his balcony to check. He looked straight down to see if anyone was actually waiting for him. Sure enough, a massive crowd of fans had gathered right under his window. He simply couldn't handle the situation anymore. Step outside, a mob of frantic journalists was already waiting. They desperately wanted to know if cash was still his ultimate goal. But Yooseong just flashed them a smug, confident grin. He openly declared TV celebrities were just trouble-making drunkards. Mockingly, he asked if they could even do a single thing right. Smiling smugly, he prepared to shock them. The incredibly confident player calmly promised he would repay his audience with premium entertainment. That promise sounded great, but the confused reporters didn't understand him at all. A highly confused journalist stepped up to demand a much clearer explanation of his words. Out of nowhere, a massive earthquake shook the ground directly beneath their feet. Stumbling in panic, everyone felt the ground shaking. Nobody knew what was happening. Suddenly, the loud system spoke. It declared that tower construction was already nearing completion. At 96% complete, active buildings were now open to players. Players just had to read the info at the gates. They were ordered to monitor building heights and launch successful raids to prevent total annihilation. Smirking at the chaos, Yooseong quickly adjusted his hood. He casually walked away, acting like absolutely nothing had happened. Behind him, the completely shocked crowd finally noticed some flyers left by the Hero King. The promotional flyers boldly announced that his brand new merchandise was already officially on sale. Just minutes later, he arrived at his final destination. Yooseong was actually surprised to see that not a single living soul remained. Not even a rat was around, which was actually perfect for him. With a smug look, the fighter muttered that the first day was always beautifully quiet. A system notification confirmed that the managers were absolutely thrilled. They loved seeing the clown ruler's star, making the iron ruler laugh. He proudly bestowed his powerful blessing on the warrior who abandoned his sword. The Ice Empress giggled, blessing the one who carried the mirror. This didn't bother him at all. Next, the system calculated stats. His overall compatibility with swords had skyrocketed, along with a massive boost to his ice magic. Meanwhile, his blunt words about loving money stuck with his fans. They never expected that, but Yooseong kept grinding. He did absolutely everything to claim rewards from the watching rulers. The golden ruler laughed hysterically, preparing to hand over his gift. He granted a blessing that dramatically boosted luck. This extra luck lasted 3 rounds, but Yooseong wanted permanent titles. He refused to wait, eagerly opening his season reward right now. The legendary Emperor's blessing would heavily impact his gacha luck. He grinned, spotting a bright gold glow. Seeing that bright yellow light, he knew the item would be of legendary quality. He obtained a legendary black coat with beautiful, shining gold trim on it. It boosted his evasion and agility to insane levels. He gave the armor to a loyal knight cornered by a dangerous dark elf during a clash between the two races, saving him with this rare defensive item. Equipped with a heroic tier artifact, Yooseong was finally ready to clear the tower. The brave warrior threw on a gold-trimmed black coat, completely prepared for the upcoming raid. But out of nowhere, the legendary ruler suddenly took back his divine blessing. Instead, he officially approved the young man's side business of selling merchandise t-shirts. Within minutes, our fighter teleported straight inside the glowing, bright tower building. Before he could even scan his new surroundings, a heavy, monstrous sound echoed nearby. A massive, towering orc stood right in his path, blocking the intruder. It was eager to slaughter the youngster who dared enter this tower of the bloody moon. Instantly, the system warned him that relentless waves of monsters were headed his way. To complete this entire raid, he had to take down the Moonsinger on the highest floor. Wearing a confident smirk, Yooseong decided it was the perfect time to test his new heroic powers. His immediate task was to forge an incredibly powerful ice sword from thin air. Summoning this particular blade meant he could not equip any other weapons. The creation process was incredibly fast, and within moments, a chilling blade materialized in front of him. A system prompt confirmed his compatibility with the frozen weapon had increased. On top of that, he even unlocked a special frost breath passive effect. Gripping the hilt tightly, the young man smiled and prepared to strike. He charged right into the fray, barely even viewing these giant beasts as actual threats. The bloodthirsty goblin lunged first, swinging a heavy battle axe while completely underestimating him. Yooseong did not hesitate, unleashing a devastating sweep with his newly forged frost blade. The sheer force of the swing unleashed a freezing gale across the entire room. A sudden biting frost gripped the monsters, freezing them solid in their tracks. With just a few expert slashes, he scattered those giant orcs like loose socks across the floor. The brief skirmish ended in seconds, allowing him to casually look around. He strolled past, examining the frozen statues of the goblins he just defeated. Walking forward with a calm grin, he lightly ran his fingers along the icy blade. The system chimed, announcing that his overall player level and skill card rank had increased. Along with those upgrades, his core physical attributes received a massive boost. A notification flashed, confirming that Yooseong had single-handedly cleared the first floor. The blue-eyed warrior smirked, calling it a decent start to his climb. He decided to keep pushing, but first he quickly pulled up his status screen. A prestigious new title, Lord Slayer, had been officially added to his profile. This gave him active winter blessings and increased sword sharpness. Without wasting a second, our hero stepped onto the second floor, staying highly alert. Surprisingly, his face showed a hint of disappointment and absolute boredom. What caused this sudden mood shift? Just ahead, a massive horde of muscular orcs gathered. They were huddled around a campfire, loudly chugging alcohol from giant wooden barrels. One massive brute spotted the human intruder, immediately realizing he was there to fight. The beast roared that a warrior had arrived to send them all to Valhalla. They welcomed a glorious death. Smiling, Yooseong instantly summoned his frosty blade. Summoning his icy sword, he swung it, ready to deliver that glorious end. Lunging at the closest beast, Yooseong yelled that he would show them what heaven looked like. Within minutes, the entire area was splattered with green monster blood. The floor was covered in slime and defeated foes. Soon, the youngster moved up. He stepped onto the fourth floor, highly satisfied with how fast his levels were climbing. Fighting without a single break was getting tough. Suddenly, his cautious eyes darted to the side. Something he had not done in a very long time. The young man frantically tried to assess the situation. He kept his guard completely up, ready for whatever was coming next. The guards had completely blocked the path to the commander's quarters. A brutal battle was unavoidable now, but he saw this as a perfect chance to show these so-called elite monsters who was boss, without a single shred of fear. With the Iron Ruler's blessing on his enemies, Kanyong had to keep his focus sharp. Pounding their chests, the massive orcs roared that their emperor had given them his approval, which meant they had to fight with every ounce of strength they possessed. Lifting their blades, the furious beasts screamed that Valhalla awaited them. They were eager to face the warrior who would finally send them to the afterlife. Their leader ordered the horde to sing a song of blood and steel for their lord, as their mighty ruler deserved nothing less. Meanwhile, Kanyong confidently unsheathed his icy blade. He silently realized these relentless foes would not even let him catch his breath. Violent gusts of wind began to howl, yet they could not slow the charging brutes. Kanyong kept his eyes locked on the target, fully aware of the stakes. A massive monster charged forward, aiming a devastating blow right at his feet. The ground shattered, but our nimble protagonist managed to leap away just in time. Staying completely calm, he swiftly maneuvered behind the giant beast to strike. He swung his blade, targeting the heavy steel helmet of his opponent. 0 damage, his worst suspicions were completely correct. These elite warriors possessed a high resistance to ice magic, completely ruining his plan. The sudden realization made Kanyong incredibly tense as he leaped onto a nearby chandelier. Hanging there with one hand, the young count desperately calculated his next move. Time was running out fast, and he needed to land a single fatal blow. But he lacked the power. Luckily, he had recently upgraded his gear close to the absolute limit. Even better, he had secured a heroic level ability and a rare artifact. Opening his inventory, he grabbed the frozen relic known as the Ice Heart. It would grant his gear a massive glacier synergy. However, the system warned that anyone lacking ice magic would be turned into ice. An absolute death sentence. The battle-hungry orc ordered Kanyong to get down, shouting that cowards would never enter Valhalla. An enraged goblin then hurled his massive battle axe straight at him. He was tired of the human hiding up there and avoiding a real fight. With no time left to hesitate, Kanyong decided to activate the Ice Heart. Instantly, an overwhelming aura of pure frost magic erupted from the artifact. The legendary glacier synergy was finally active, sending shivers down everyone's spines. The system immediately notified him that all his ice attribute skills were heavily buffed. The ice attribute had been boosted. Smirking, our confident warrior asked, "Who needs a golden spoon when we have a whole cave of gold?" Then, a merciless orc swung his massive axe, roaring that everything ends in war. There was no escape, and he aimed directly at Kanyong's left arm. But the blow did absolutely nothing. The fearless hero used his artifact to turn his arm into solid, unbreakable ice. Without wasting a single second, the brave warrior lunged forward, aiming to impale his foe. He wanted to run his blade straight through him, but right then, the giant froze, completely knocked off balance, crashing hard to the dirt. In a flash, his heavy steel helmet flew off like a feather. Boom! Our brave warrior got notified of another sweet level up. The surrounding goblins panicked, terrified for their fallen ally, but they still did not give up trying to crush the youngster, without even thinking of running. Yooseong kept blocking those heavy monster attacks, fiercely wielding his massive ice sword. This whole defensive display completely enraged the red-eyed creatures, who wanted nothing more than to end this drawn-out slaughter immediately. Suddenly, one of the bloodthirsty beasts tried to swing his heavy weapon, but our nimble young man dodged flawless. Keeping cool, the kid gripped his massive blade tightly, using it as a shield that no enemy attack could ever pierce. Finally, the main character made his move, unleashing a flurry of devastating slashes that dealt massive damage to his foes. A beefy goblin tried to strike him midair, but his plan failed. Ruined, our hero delivered a lightning-fast counter that stopped his opponent dead in his tracks, sending him flying backward. At insane speed, the massive beast crashed into the wall, losing a horn as the warrior's level spiked once again. Now, the brave fighter held two blades in his hands, making him twice as fast and twice as lethal. The shocked orc behind him stared in utter shock. Finally, he realized how serious things were. With absolutely zero intention of showing even a sliver of mercy, our player charged right back into the fray, his level climbing steadily. With titanic effort, he boosted his stats to crazy heights, definitely a reason to celebrate. Blocking his way was that giant goblin, dazed, completely terrified now. Sharp ice spears manifested right before the panicking brute, giving him no chance of dodging. Letting out a quiet sigh, Kang Yooseong noted that he was done with this floor and could finally advance. But wait, the system was silent, making him realize he must have missed a stray. Right then, that pissed off orc lunged from behind. That cold grin, he instantly summoned his icy son, muttering that it was time for the final blow. Just a few minutes later, the beast crashed to the floor with twin daggers buried deep in its back, and our guy had officially cleared this elite stage. For his victory, he received a special reward, a random skill card pack, and 1,000 achievement points. Eager to see what he got, the exhausted fighter immediately began to unwrap the set. Less than a minute later, a common skill card popped that briefly boosts his raw strength, granting a quick pierce effect. Column K equipped the skill, only for a system alert to pop up. The blessing of the one who renounced the sword heavily boosted the card. After that, our hero turned back to his immediate goals and continued pushing forward, seeking adventure. Suddenly, a young girl appeared, with brown hair materialized ahead, quite surprised to see him still drawing breath. She calmly pointed out that a living customer is way better for business, so he really shouldn't go dying on her. The automated shopkeeper then remarked that 1,600 achievement points was actually a pretty decent sum. The beauty then urged him to spend them on her card packs, promising great value. Hope of pulling a legendary item. Though skeptical of his luck, the young man decides to consume a speed and fire potion, costing only 300 experience points. From his balance, a little girl begs him to buy just one set, but he covers his ears. He can't hear a thing. Soon, our brave hero finally enters the boss chamber, where the massive beast sits alone on his throne. Enjoying his solitude, the angry monster orders the young warrior to fight and die with honor, quickly conjuring a protective icy barrier around his throne. With deep concentration, the fighter begins mapping out his next moves to predict how the monster will strike. He jokingly wonders if his opponents are actually weak gnomes instead of giant orcs. Suddenly, he hurls a powerful fire potion straight at the beast, causing an immediate violent explosion. The massive creature screams in agony, while our calm warrior carefully observes how the battlefield develops. Burning alive doesn't matter. The unstoppable boss remains standing strong, keeping his eyes locked on his enemy. the furious brute charges forward once more to attack, muttering wild things about Valhalla, the sacred hall of honor. For all orcs, Kenya disappeared. The giant rages over his empty hands, while the young man is already behind him, aiming his sword at his neck, and landing a perfect blow on soft flesh, triggering a sudden freezing effect. On contact, thick layers of ice rapidly encase the massive beast, forcing him to drop his weapon, unable to pick it up. Power-ups make ordinary skills broken. Ordinary skills become incredibly useful, bringing a satisfied smile to his face. However, the stubborn orc refuses to die, fiercely growling that this is not his end. Fueled by pure rage, the Blood Moonsinger suddenly activates his terrifying berserk mode, roaring that he has absolutely no intention of surrendering. Smirking, our reckless hero notes that a simple game would only make him bored anyway. The furious monster starts stomping, sending intense, heavy vibrations shaking through the floor. Underneath them, the daredevil knows those shockwaves are incredibly powerful on their own, and one clean hit from the giant would definitely end him. His provocative words only make the brute angrier, but as he lunges, the boy quickly takes cover behind a defensive icy wall. No retreat. From his target, the giant relentlessly hammers away, trying to shatter the dome. While the level-headed Yooseong calmly starts counting down, he grips his blade. With a devious grin, plotting his next move, leaping high, he keeps counting while pulling a strange item from his inventory, waiting for the perfect moment. He drops a bizarre-looking glass flask down onto the floor. From above, he grins and declares that time is up, as protective icy rays continue to swirl around him, keeping him safe. Within minutes, the motionless Blood Moon Singer lies defeated on the ground, and the area is successfully cleared. System notifications announce that our hero has officially conquered the tower, rewarding him with a rare set of item cards for his achievement. As the very first conqueror, the speed boost begins wearing off, and Kay, nearly in tears, mutters that this is just too good to be true. Knows these cards are the absolute best loot drop in this entire Thirdal Tower. Without wasting a single second, he decides to open the ice attribute pack, since he cannot wait to see what is inside. But his smile suddenly vanished from his face when he received a completely ordinary ice hero card. The discouraged guy grumbled that this game was always messing with him, making him miserable. But he had no choice but to suck it up. Very soon our hero went to the tower of the third-level devil worshippers with a limit of players from 1 to 16. Small, sharp-eared monsters immediately surrounded the stranger, who they hissed at, calling him a filthy pagan. These long-clawed beasts did not hesitate for a second, immediately lunging at the newcomer. Staying perfectly calm, Yun fired rapid ice arrows at them, keeping his rabid enemies from getting close. For several minutes he kept launching these sharp projectiles, refusing to let them land a single hit. Honestly, our warrior loved leveling up his skills, and he yelled it out loud while freezing the advancing horde dead in their tracks. The ice arrows drew cold straight from the air, transforming it into deadly ammunition. The synergy effect boosted both their damage and numbers. Suddenly, the system warned the young fighter that the second wave was starting, but he did not blink. The bloodthirsty demons mocked him as the king of alcohol demons and practically begged him to send them straight to hell, their favorite place. Letting out a heavy sigh, our fighter prepared to push them back, even though he really was not in the mood to deal with this. Smirking confidently, he grabbed his freezing sword and told the trash to line up, promising them a trip straight into a boiling cauldron. Right after that, he unleashed a massive skill, freezing the horned minions solid and sparking absolute panic. His level and combat stats started skyrocketing as he continued his spectacular assault. Even while freezing, the horned beasts kept calling him a filthy pagan, prompting our brave warrior to quickly open his stat screen to check things out. Suddenly, a bright red system alert flashed before his eyes, warning that the level boss, a high-ranking demon cultist, had finally appeared. That was bad news. A robed, terrifying figure materialized, hovering silently in the air, and declared he would offer this human trash's blood to the demon king. The sinister fiend pointed a finger at our hero, ordering his remaining minions to slaughter him on the spot. The brainwashed beasts charged forward with their blades, but our unbothered warrior just launched more arrows, piercing one right through the chest. The cult was completely dumbfounded, unable to comprehend how their ally was put down so fast, but reality hit them hard. A system notification popped up stating that the terrified survivor was now completely frozen solid, our fearless main character Was actually glad he joined this raid, since it was the perfect playground to test out his passive abilities. The active synergy effect combined with the glacier boosted his ice spear damage, as the glowing holographic screen pointed out once again. Gripping his weapon with one hand, the young man wanted to test out a newly unlocked skill that looked pretty interesting. His goal was to see how many ice weapons he could summon simultaneously, pouring his mana into it. Hundreds of razor-sharp ice spears began erupting from the frozen floor. That was a fantastic result for a first try. Within seconds, the frozen spikes rose completely and a satisfied grin spread across Kyuso's face. Success. The brave young man gripped the hilt of the massive spear, getting ready to put a brutal end to these cultists. Zigzagging across the battlefield, he closed the distance in a flash, ready to end this fight right now. A powerful blow struck, the monster's frozen arm shattered. Thrown completely off balance, the beast had zero escape. 3 sharp spears pierced right through the pitiful devil's body. With absolutely no mercy, the young warrior kept blasting his target. The system quickly confirmed that the demon cult was completely destroyed. With the tower cleared, he earned a random equipment card as a reward. Opening the box, he received some silver armor, which was totally useless. Interestingly, he realized his ice sword still retained its elemental power. It worked even when shattered, unless broken into over 8 pieces. Suddenly, a suspicious rustling noise echoed from behind him. He spun around instantly, completely on guard. The system warned him that a powerful faction was watching him. He really could not believe they had tracked him down so fast. While the situation was pretty confusing, he refused to panic at all. Instead, the warrior quietly decided to just wait and see. This massive tower world was packed with dangerous factions vying for power. Specifically, they were talking about the mysterious Shadow Council. Their members wore dark robes and creepy plague doctor masks. Befriending them would grant him protection and mystical powers. In a flash, the masked cultists surrounded him on all sides. One of them stepped forward, recognizing him as a mere mortal. He asked if our hero wanted to join the shadows again. Joining them sounded like a good idea, but he hesitated. Memories of working with them surfaced, but something still felt off. Although he wanted to make a deal, he played hard to get. He pointed out there were other rival factions in the tower. The leader laughed, asking if he forgot how powerful they were. Calmly, Kang Yooseong replied that was exactly why he wanted a deal. The masked leader frowned and asked what he actually wanted from them. With a pretty sly grin, our hero replied that talk was cheap. Now watch him make a completely outrageous demand with a smirk. He demanded a shadow beast and a rare dark ability card. This highly audacious request completely shocked all the council members. The leader scoffed, warning him not to overestimate himself. He claimed all humans in this tower were just pathetic bugs. Kang Yooseong basically called them trash and began to walk away. But the leader instantly called him back, proving he took the bait. Right at that moment, a shadowy creature resembling a cat stepped forward. It stared at him with a strangely intelligent gaze. The dark predator slowly padded right up to the still warrior. A system alert popped up, confirming he got the shadow beast. This was the exact prize he wanted to squeeze out of them. He also received 100,000 achievement points as a bonus. Kneeling down, he gently stroked the cute cat with his finger. To top it off, he also walked away with a rare shadow blade. After receiving the card, the leader asked if he was pleased, leaving him slightly surprised. Our hero simply nodded in agreement and began to inspect his shiny new item. Raising his hand with a smile, he officially agreed to join the Shadow Council faction. This instantly put their members at ease, and the warrior received some great news. His standing with the faction had skyrocketed thanks to his smart choice. Walking down the street with a smug grin, Yooseong felt completely satisfied. He knew this season was going to be an absolutely incredible run for him. He debated whether to keep pushing his luck or just enjoy his current gains. But his peace was suddenly shattered by a hoarse voice behind him. Turning around with a heavy sigh, the young man felt slightly annoyed. Knowing another tedious chore awaited him, a swarm of eager reporters rushed over. They begged him to share his thoughts on clearing 2 level 3 towers. Our exhausted protagonist simply replied that he was just a highly skilled player. He confidently asked if they agreed with his absolute genius, leaving them speechless. A reporter from the crowd mentioned that top players were raiding more actively. He added that the famous sword lord from China had entered a level 4 tower. Unbothered, Yooseong asked how many people went with him, since that sounded pretty serious. They explained he was accompanied by 5 veterans from a top guild. Unfortunately, 4 of those elite veterans had already lost their lives in battle. With a heavy sigh, Yooseong noted that the sword lord basically used people as shields. He honestly did not understand how a coward like that got such a cool nickname. The stunned reporter tried to press him further, but someone suddenly yelled. They announced that the Chinese swordsman had just entered the level 5 tower. Keeping his cool, Yooseong calmly asked how many people went with the lord this time. A panicked voice replied that the man had actually gone in completely alone. Smiling, Yooseong called him energetic, though rushing at the start of the season is pointless. Everyone knew that St. Mary Gerger always focused on gathering gear first. Meanwhile, Tomb Guardian Georg was busy handling paperwork, ignoring the game entirely. He had absolutely no interest in competing and focused on his documents. Our protagonist realized the Sword Lord must have scored a great item in that tower. A swarm of reporters immediately pressed Yooseong, eager to hear his thoughts. Tapping his temple with a heavy sigh, our hero made a surprising statement. He bluntly called the lone swordsman an idiot, shocking everyone around him. A worried journalist asked if he was planning to challenge the legendary lord. His extremely confident attitude certainly made it seem like a direct challenge. Laughing it off, Yooseong admitted he was also a fool, but he had a choice. If he had to choose between winning and losing, he would always pick victory. As they warned him to watch his mouth, our daredevil made his next move. He asked who wanted to join him, and soon a system notification popped up. It warned him that only a single player would claim the final glory. Under the clown ruler's playful guidance, everyone immediately began placing their bets. Most of them put their money on Yooseong, including the powerful Ice Emperor. Inside the War Town Hall, our hero prepared for a massive defense battle. With no shop in sight, Yooseong was extremely confident about his upcoming victory. He was ready to fight for his dignity and could not wait to begin. A strange rule pops up, making it impossible for players to join the same side. With victory as the only objective, Yooseong decides it is finally time to get serious. He is a true master of the blade. With that, he steps inside the massive tower. Meanwhile, the wicked Kabali's empire has launched a brutal war of conquest. Their troops have invaded the Kingdom of La, dragging Yooseong into a legendary struggle. Right then, the system demands that he pick a side, a critical choice. This sudden prompt leaves him pretty stuck. Choosing is surprisingly tough. This requires serious thought. His rival already joined the Kabali's empire. Since his opponent picked Kabali's, our warrior has no choice but to back La. Yooseong smiles, knowing that the game usually rewards the underdog with better loot. So he is not upset at all. Right on cue, a new screen flashes. The system confirms his choice of the good side, preparing his instant teleportation. He is sent straight to the palace fortress. In seconds, Yooseong arrives. He materializes right inside a war room, surrounded by heavily armored knights. They freeze in absolute shock, while Yooseong remains completely cool and unbothered. But the soldiers soon overwhelm him with tears of pure, desperate joy. They honestly believe the gods have finally shown mercy on their hopeless kingdom. Suddenly, they are all hugging and cheering, praising their brand new savior. Yooseong stays totally silent, carefully reading the room and sizing them up. He can tell they are planning a defense, though their gear looks terrible. Still, they look ready. A polite knight steps up and asks to sit. Once seated, he asks who is running this place. Instantly, all smiles vanish. The knights suddenly look incredibly awkward, shifting their eyes to the floor. Yooseong watches this strange reaction, completely baffled by their silent panic. He has no clue what is wrong. Then, a figure steps forward from the ranks. The man sneers, loudly commenting on how carefree their legendary guest seems. It is a bald dwarf named Talstupis, the loudmouth commander of this fortress. He demands that Yooseong show some proper respect and follow court rules. Ignoring the rules, Yooseong cuts him off and bluntly asks if he wants to win. His voice is incredibly firm. The arrogant dwarf replies with total confidence. He claims that while they lack physical numbers, their spirit is unmatched. The dwarf proudly insists that his brave soldiers will never back down. But Yooseong is already completely sick of this guy's delusional bragging. As Talstupis keeps rambling, Yooseong suddenly clocks him right in the gut. The punch sends the commander flying backwards. Yooseong glares down at him. As the dwarf crashes into the floor, Yooseong calmly announces a change in management. He declares himself the new boss and tells the stunned knights to assemble. He demands a full breakdown of their active troops and combat classes. He learns that they have 5,000 drafted peasants. Only 900 of them can even shoot a bow. The gap is absurd. The power difference is staggering. Thankfully, there is no magic in this world. On top of that, Yooseong's Sword Lord title does not grant magic flame abilities. He is the heir to an Iron Lord. Usually, players serve just one master. They sign a single contract for locked rewards, but Yooseong is different. He gets rewards from multiple monarchs because the Clown Lord made him an outcast. On the other hand, a ruler could take several people under his wing, but only one would receive special privileges as his heir. The regional governors always supported. They're chosen favorites, but strict rules applied, like how the successors' abilities couldn't be tied to the Iron Ruler. Smirking faintly, our hero muttered under his breath that they actually stood a decent chance of winning. At the same time, he realized the defenders were under suffocating pressure. Unlike anything he felt, who knew how real these tower worlds actually were. Were these soldiers actual living beings, or just complex system creations? The concept completely fascinated him. Keeping his composure, the young warrior knew his immediate focus had to stay on the defensive. Morale was key. Right on cue, a nearby knight began frantically waving a giant banner from high above, shouting that a legendary savior had finally arrived. The soldiers below roared with joy. The knight announced that the corrupt High-End leader was officially stripped of command, and this warrior standing here would take over. The shocked defenders felt a wave of hope. They believed heaven hadn't forgotten them now, that the corrupt fat pig was finally gone. The knight quietly informed Kanai that the entire garrison was deeply relieved to hear that he had personally taken care of the tyrant. This was perfect timing. Now the young leader wouldn't have to worry about internal division. But then, a scout on a watchtower screamed in panic. The Imperial Army had launched a sudden surprise offensive, swarming their outer walls. Terrified archers drew their bowstrings, even though their hands shook violently. Elite Imperial swordsmen quickly scaled the tall siege ladders. But the defenders couldn't hold them back. The invaders moved with brutal speed, easily dodging the desperate rain of arrows as they climbed. The veteran knight warned Kanai that the enemy vanguard reached the gates. If they killed their vanguard commander, the rest of the army would break. Keeping his cool, Kanai smirked. You knew he was about to unleash something insane. He decided to call upon the Shadow Beast to teach them a lesson. The exhausted knights watched in shock as thick, pitch-black smoke swallowed the walls. Right on cue, a monstrous, ravenous Shadow Beast materialized in front of them. Kanai ordered it to tear them apart, leaving the charging invaders completely baffled. Neither the Imperial troops nor the castle defenders understood what this summon was. Whispers spread of a giant dark beast looming over the high stone battlements. But the Imperial commander barked at his men to stop panicking. The officer tried to keep his troops focused, but then his own face suddenly warped with pure, paralyzing terror. Shaking all over, the commander slowly turned his head, realizing that he was looking straight at a monster. The front lines were instantly slaughtered, shredded by razor-sharp claws as the hungry beast tore through them. Terrified survivors scrambled backward, screaming that they had to retreat immediately, but it was too late. A desperate officer commanded his squad to abandon the wall and head to the secondary defense lines, but just as they turned, the entire squadron froze, paralyzed in place with absolutely no hope of escape. Watching the panic, Kanai knew his little pet had succeeded. That little shadow creature must be hungry. Our hero wishes him bon appetit and lets the beast feast on the panicked enemy knights, who finally realize the true horror of their situation. There is nowhere left to run now, and all they can do is accept their grim fate. Then the bloodthirsty beast snaps its massive jaws shut, leaving only a few stray ice crystals floating in the air. Meanwhile, the defenders of the palace fortress continue their relentless, merciless counterattack, refusing to yield an inch of their home soil to the enemy. Our cold-blooded hero does not stand aside, swinging his icy sword to help his allies. One by one, the enemy soldiers fall before attacks they cannot hope to block. After a few minutes of absolute chaos, the young man suddenly stops, staring intently ahead, his senses screaming that something is deeply wrong. But strangely, there is no trace of the Sword Lord anywhere. When an active player enters the battlefield, things get highly unpredictable. boosting his allies' morale while painting a massive target. His presence acts like a massive, glowing beacon to every nearby enemy. However, actual lives are never on the line thanks to the tower rules. If you lose, you are simply thrown out to finish the raid solo. Players are strictly forbidden from killing each other, but the structures can. That is the ultimate loophole. Kang Yuzhen will not die in this hall. But that does not mean he can afford to lose. He knows the plan. But don't worry, our hero has his own counter-strategy, while his shadow beast continues shredding the Imperial forces. The entire battlefield quickly becomes littered with corpses. Looking at the endless piles of bodies, the young warrior feels slightly agitated. He quietly wonders if he really must slaughter everyone just to draw the boss out. Right on cue, a blade impaled in the dirt suddenly starts rising up. A massive vibration ripples through the ground as bloodied weapons begin to hover. They rip themselves from the fallen soldiers, presenting a truly gruesome spectacle. The terrified fortress defenders stare at the floating blades in complete shock. Panic spreads rapidly as the weapons begin spinning at terrifying, breakneck speeds. Our level-headed hero immediately recognizes the exact blade control technique. But he has no idea how the Sword Lord got his hands on that card. Smiling, the fearless young man mockingly praises his rival's incredible luck. Leaping high into the air, the daredevil makes a bold guess. He jokingly suggests that the Iron Ruler himself gifted him the card. Without wasting another second on trash talk, the brave warrior charges, gripping his frozen sword tightly, noting his opponent's thorough preparation. Cowardly hiding in the shadows did him some good, with a sly smile. Yuzhen confidently reminds him that he has not been sitting idle either. Sprinting forward, the warrior activates his advanced shadow techniques once again. He is fully prepared to deflect the incoming storm of flying swords. A series of swift, perfect counterattacks deflects the sharp weapons away. Smiling confidently, Kang Yuzhen declares that the Sword Lord is far too late. Our hero has already finished leveling up. Now he summons a shadow blade. Forged directly from his own shadow, one of the stunned knights gasps, realizing with absolute shock that the Empire has its own player on their side. Our hero remains completely calm, ready to show them a real player's power. He wondered if they had come for him, keeping a close eye on what was happening. As the opponents clashed in battle, the brave warrior muttered to himself that the tide of battle had suddenly turned, running his hand along the sharp blade. The fearless warrior asked if the Lord actually expected this to break him. Right then, the young man called out that the accuracy of a sword technique was inversely proportional to the number of swords before lunging straight at the enemy. At that exact second, a massive area is coated in thick ice from which it is impossible for any ordinary person to escape, but our hero spins all those flying blades around himself, creating a violent whirlpool that completely neutralizes them. The young man has no intention of holding back, slightly shifting his posture. As if preparing for something special, raising his voice, he boldly declares that the enemy's high-tech tricks will not work on him, making resistance totally useless. But wait, his expression suddenly shifts, and he looks sharply to the side, as if catching sight of something strange. Before long, that familiar sly smile returns, showing that a brilliant new plan has formed in his sharp mind. Suddenly, a massive explosion rocks the area, and the golden silhouette of a huge cross appears in the air. The system announces that Seraphim's shield has successfully repelled the enemy's attack, while the tense Sword Lord clenches his teeth, protecting his face from flying shrapnel. Right after that, a notification warns that his armor is depleted, and recharging will take over 100 hours. Smiling, Kangun asks if his opponent honestly hopes to seize the fortress with only this basic technology at his command. The exhausted warrior, standing 10 meters away, does not rush to answer, trying to catch his breath. First, staring deeply and seriously into his opponent's eyes, he asks how he expects to actually achieve victory in this tower. The Lord says firmly that even if this fortress and all these kingdoms are completely destroyed, the Empire cannot win until they deal with the hero. The positive young man asks if his opponent knew this all along, yet still chose to side with the Empire just to defeat him. His blood-soaked opponent answers that the player is a hero whose sole duty is to protect the world. Drawing a sharp sword from its sheath, he snaps that a scoundrel who cannot understand this basic truth has absolutely no right to call himself a hero. Fuming, the Lord loses his temper, ready to fight to his very last breath to finish off this Young man, keeping calm, Yun explains that the world the communist is defending is not made up solely of members from his own country's guild. The Chinese man listens closely to his opponent, even if he does not quite understand his point. Flying into a rage, he screams that the scoundrel's death will be agonizing, charging forward with a sword gripped in his hands. With a calm smile, our hero replies that he intends to live a long life, so a pathetic swordsman does not get to decide that. The agile warrior easily dodges the enemy's lethal sword strike, which fails to leave even a single scratch on him. Shards of sharp ice materialize in the air, but they do not bother the sword lord. The cold, expressionless Khan keeps pressing his attack. With freezing ice crystals to keep him back, the furious Chinese man barks at him to stop using cheap tricks as a massive shadowy beast rises behind him. The Chinese fighter heard a strange rustling behind him and spun around. He caught a sudden, terrifying glimpse of extremely sharp fangs. Instantly, the very agile warrior leaped high up, causing the giant beast to crash face first into dirt. The boss warned that the high rulers were watching. Defeat was simply not an option here. Our hero just laughed, completely unfazed by the threat of their judgment. Instead, he asked a bizarre question: why on earth did they think he was fighting anyway? Meanwhile, his hands slowly tightened around the grip of his freezing blade. Waiting for the absolute perfect moment to strike, he planned to catch his enemy off guard. Without a single second of warning, he charged straight ahead. Sweating heavily, the Chinese warrior called the young boy a complete coward for talking so much. He thought it was just a distraction to strike his weak spot, but he was wrong. That wasn't the plan. Right then, the fighter froze in absolute pure shock. Watching Kang Yooseong vault right over the fence, the stunned Chinese warrior was left completely behind. Bellowed out, asking where on earth he was going, but the nimble kid just smiled. He kept sprinting forward at full speed, leaving nothing but a massive cloud of dust behind. He hadn't jumped into this clash just to show off or inspire the troops. His actual target lay elsewhere, as he ran right toward the enemy lines, the utterly terrified knights of the Imperial Army panicked, screaming that a player was coming. They scattered in all directions. The angry Chinese warrior pursued him with absolute burning rage now. But he couldn't catch up. He roared loudly for the running scoundrel to stop, but his desperate shouts only motivated the clever trickster to speed up even more. Look at that smirk, you just know another wild scheme is already brewing. Meanwhile, inside the Imperial barracks, the panicked commanders were completely lost. They desperately tried to figure out how to stop this unstoppable monster before it was too late. Many were already planning to flee. A worried Duke Barma had no clue what the player was planning, but his close allies just told him to stay calm now. Suddenly, the heavy tent door flew open, letting blinding sunlight flood inside. In stepped the cold-blooded Kang Yooseong, who had finally tracked down these hiding, highly cowardly soldiers. Holding his freezing sword in his hand, the expressionless warrior looked ready. He calmly stated that there was a completely different way to finish the tower's main task. With a quick swing of his icy blade, the young man smiled. But let's be real, his panicked enemies were not sharing that happy vibe right now. They instantly recognized the player, wondering if their gods had completely turned their backs on them. The guards knew they had to step up to defend their leader. They rushed to protect Duke Barma, but Kang Yooseong did not even consider them real enemies. In an instant, the fighter spread his arms wide, summoning cold power. Unleashing his freezing mana with one single swift swing of his icy sword, he struck down. The merciless player instantly dispatched several of the army's top commanding officers. Finally, the furious Chinese warrior caught up to him, screaming wild insults and demanding immediate revenge. As usual, the young man just smirked and gave his opponent advice. He said he should have dressed his elite officers in simple civilian clothes to hide them. Gritting his teeth in pure rage, the Chinese fighter stared at him. He was utterly sick of this annoying kid constantly getting in his way like this. Lashing out, the angry Chinese warrior called his opponent a complete degenerate. He thrust forward, aiming the razor-sharp tip of his sword directly at his neck. Yooseong smiled again, which deeply annoyed the sword lord. During the palace battle, Duke Barmit and all the commanders of the Kabali's empire were killed by an unknown mercenary, forcing the imperial army to retreat. Unexpectedly, a strange technique began to dissolve the weapons of his furious opponent. He could no longer harm Yooseong or even resist, so defeat was inevitable. Yooseong smiled when he got the message that the tower was successfully taken while his rival failed to complete the mission. As a Reward: the fighter could choose one of his opponent's abilities, those being the Great Sword Essence, Iron Martial Arts, or Absolute Blade Control. The young man joked that his opponent was generous for giving a choice, but the angry called him a bastard. The opponent threatened violence, but the calm player made his choice, selecting the sword control ability. This heroic tier technique allowed him to breathe his thoughts into weapons to control them. The warrior gained metal synergy, meaning the effects of his abilities with this attribute were massively enhanced. The furious sword lord banged his head against the glass, screaming that the bastard Yooseong couldn't ever hope this was the end of it. But in his hands, the smug Yooseong held a rare card, showing it to his opponent, further enraging him. But hold on, the story takes a massive leap. Guy was walking around the area and suddenly spotted a white mask on the ground. The young man's gaze immediately fell on the strange accessory, and he considered picking it up. It was completely unclear whether it was safe to pick up an unfamiliar object, but curiosity got the better of him. Right after, he received a system notification asking if he wanted to be a hero and proudly carry that title. The young man crouched down and picked up the mask, thinking to himself that he had been waiting for this day to make that same choice again. The accessory felt quite dense and pleasant to the touch, so all of his doubts immediately vanished. The system then warned that the player would become a hero among his peers, and other people would no longer understand him. The powerful entity smiled, calling it a hilarious irony and asking if the kid agreed. Putting on the clown mask, Yooseong spoke in a voice only he could hear, saying this had already happened countless times before. Then a notification was received that the clown lord and Yooseong had signed an important contract. Suddenly, the young man opened his eyes, realizing that it was all just a dream and he had simply been asleep. He was awakened by loud phone call. The heavy vibrations on his desk were impossible to ignore, with 4 missed calls already waiting on the screen, indicating someone was desperately trying to reach him. Suddenly, someone started banging on his door, and a familiar male voice yelled for him to open up quickly. Yooseong wondered about these incredibly disturbing dreams. He really didn't understand why his acquaintance was knocking on his door so early in the morning. Opening the door, the sarcastic young man asked with a smile what had brought the shy boy to his home. Pactisic, looking rough and smelling of cigarette smoke, laughed slightly, joking that the kid was acting like a total big shot. After signing with that murderous ruler, the man became known by his gaming nickname, the Striking Sword. He was among the 30. He was among the best players, even leading the Blue House's national intelligence department. Yooseong noticed his old friend looked incredibly tired, asking if he had been running around on his very first day, but the man replied that he had zero time for that. Still, Park Tae-shik proudly mentioned that from the first day of the season, war enthusiasts across the globe had been praising his incredible talents. Then Park Tae-shik asked why the young hero had not answered any of his calls, and Yooseong casually replied that he had been fast asleep through the morning sunrise. Park Tae-shik wanted to lecture him about completely ruining his entire sleep schedule, but he suddenly slipped on a stray plate and crashed face first onto the floor. Furious, he screamed, demanding why a top hero was peddling shirts like a lunatic while living inside a total pigsty. Cleaning up the messy floor, Yooseong muttered that he felt quite embarrassed, and Park Tae-shik grumbled that he lived like a complete hermit. It is honestly pretty sad to watch a legendary hero working himself to the bone just for money, while surviving entirely on greasy takeout from a cheap Chinese restaurant nearby. Still, Yooseong praised the place, insisting their beef brisket noodles were absolutely legendary, and Park Tae-shik demanded he order 2 large portions with some strong Kaoliang liquor. Yooseong had first met this scruffy, gravel-voiced old man way before their world turned into a game. Back then, as a 15-year-old kid, Yooseong loved hanging out at a local PC cafe where one day he was in the middle of a super intense match. A shocked customer nearby was discussing the kid's unbelievable victory over the phone. That customer was actually the owner of the gaming cafe, Park Tae-shik, who had heard everyone hyping up this young gaming prodigy. The man walked up to the young kid and asked if he wanted to go professional, which totally shocked Yooseong. Before that, he had only played games for fun, but the old man personally convinced his parents that he could actually turn pro. From there, he trained Yooseong relentlessly, analyzing his natural talents and pushing him past his limits. On the very day the boy turned 18 and officially debuted as a professional player, but then disaster struck in his Very first season, a massive invasion erupted from the tower, taking countless lives and throwing the entire world into total chaos. In the panic, a badly wounded Yooseong desperately tried to crawl away to save himself, completely unable to stand from the agonizing pain tearing through his legs. Yooseong was completely drenched in blood, but he barely noticed the horrific wounds because a savage monster was slowly closing in on him. His eyes were wide with sheer terror, wondering if he would even live to see tomorrow. The massive, hideous beast lunged forward, baring its razor-sharp claws to butcher its helpless prey. But right then a brave Park Tae-shik rushed to the rescue, refusing to abandon his young student in his darkest hour. Fueled by pure rage, the man slammed a dagger deep into the monster's chest, painting the room black with dark, foul blood. The vile fluid sprayed everywhere, splashing all over them. As Park Tae-shik gritted his teeth in sheer, agonizing tension, panic-stricken, he screamed to check if his student was okay, but the terrified boy immediately ran to find his family. Instead, the devastated kid saw his parents lying in a pool of cold blood, showing absolutely no signs of life. Tears began to flow uncontrollably from his eyes as he quickly realized his mother and father were truly gone forever. On that horrific day, Yooseong lost the people closest to him, weeping like a helpless, broken child who had no idea what to do next. Right then, he found his soul. The hero had an old friend named Pak nearby who tried his best to comfort him, but now, as the old friend sat down for lunch, the young hero asked why he had come to visit. With a calm look, the old man bluntly admitted he came on behalf of the association. That blunt confession caught the young hero off guard, completely stunning him. He dropped his wooden chopsticks, realizing the conversation was serious. The tense young hero asked if the organization still wanted to use him for their goals. Kai was a state-run association of elite players, wielding total control across the nation. They functioned as the only all-powerful guild capable of controlling every single player. Pak then brought up the brand-new academy, built by the association. It was practically a cruel factory, designed just to churn out obedient slaves. Pak explained that their very first graduation exam would take place in 1 week. The association requested the young hero king to attend. Smiling, Pak added that the legendary player who suddenly decided to show up would take their place. Pak was thrilled and could barely believe his ears. Without wasting any time, he quickly messaged the association members to announce the young king's arrival. Honestly, Yooseong was quite curious to meet these fresh players taking on the future. It would soon shoulder the heavy burden of protecting the country. Pak then asked about his terms, so the smiling warrior requested to push back the test. He wanted it scheduled for exactly 5 in the morning. By 4:55, the graduation test for the academy's elite recruits was already being prepared. Seeing Yooseong, the trainees felt confident they would pass, though they wondered why. They were even summoned there. Right at 5 o'clock, the main character stood quietly by the door with his hands deep in his jacket pockets. While they prepared, a suited official stood nearby boasting of their rigorous curriculum. They followed the system closely, but Yooseong asked if they were just pampered. Had they been spoon-fed right from the start? Hearing this, the head of Kai, Linongho, ignored the jab, asking him to admire the pride of their academy. These recruits were their prized first generation, wearing a dark, gold-trimmed coat. The calm young king asked if the head remembered their agreed conditions. Summoning a sharp, icy sword, Yooseong declared he would personally test their strength. Therefore, the final decision on who graduates would rest entirely on him. He decided to skip the chatter and start the test. The head secretly scoffed at his arrogance, confident that his own scheme was absolutely flawless. The recruits were highly prepared, so even the legendary king could not ruin this. Yet within the next few minutes, that smug smile completely vanished from his face. His expression quickly turned pale with absolute horror. The cold young hero casually snapped his fingers, knocking the students out one by one. He mercilessly declared they all failed. None of them could even stand up to him, and collapsed within the first minute, forced to leave the arena in disgrace. Only one girl, surrounded on all sides by sharp ice blades, managed to remain. To everyone's utter shock, she passed. The excited girl asked why she succeeded. Yooseong simply looked at her and said she was just incredibly lucky. He explained she was the luckiest of the 12 for surviving until the very end. He reminded her to never forget that luck is a player's greatest weapon. With that, Yooseong announced he was done and told her to start filming. He congratulated her on graduating, Right then, a furious Lin Xiangho bursts into the room, surrounded by surprised colleagues, shouting and demanding answers. Sweating profusely, the man reminds them that they only asked him to judge. Then the young man asks if they honestly believed he would stay clueless. He points out that all these elite students are either children of directors or closely connected to them, reminding everyone why he was called to judge. Now he wants to know why they are handing out free passes. Giving top spots to people who do not deserve them is just a scam. To exploit them later, this brave guy is not holding back at all. He calls them rotten to the core for pulling this stunt from year one. This truth bomb absolutely infuriates the academy director, who instantly snaps. He screams, calling him a brainless idiot who does not know anything. He argues that active players are simply weapons for the country to use. Did the fool really think they were treated any better anywhere else? Clenching his fist, the furious headmaster defends their corrupt methods. He claims it is all for the greater good and national security. In their brutal reality, they only have room for war heroes. He demands that the heroic king understand the situation and help. But our clever hero sees right through him. He needs soldiers for battle. These fools will never learn until their entire world crumbles around them. Lin Xiangho keeps ranting, desperately preaching about the will of the state. But his speech is cut short when a panicked assistant rushes in. Handing over a tablet, the news completely drains the color from his face. He breaks into a cold sweat, staring at the screen in pure disbelief. While the director panics, a calm Kang Yooseong watches the show with delight. He chuckles, teasingly noting that this grand academy might close very soon. It barely lasted a single year, and just like that, a video goes viral. The headline exposes the prestigious school for using dirty connections to admit students. The Master of Chaos then drops another bomb. He leaks that the head of the intelligence department is backing him. This shocking revelation spreads like wildfire across the entire internet. The bitter head of the association glares at our hero for ruining them. Smiling warmly, the young man asks if they finally know his true identity. His glasses gleam under the light, dramatically magnifying his confident eyes. Just then, a system notification pops up. The clown governor is thrilled. He sends a reward, a beautiful red gift box with a yellow bow. He cannot wait to unwrap this mysterious package to see what is inside. Minutes later, the unbothered fighter steps out of the academy building. As he walks down the steps, his loyal Pakdae-sik is already waiting. After thanking him, our hero asks if his friend will face any consequences. Will the association come after him for this leak? Pakdae-sik scoffs, replying that the government hates those corrupt guys too. They are constantly at each other's throats, so there is no need to worry. Reassured, the battle-hungry hero asks his friend for a quick favor. He asks for a quick ride straight to the Level 5 town hall. This pale desert tower mission was simple: protect the caravan and safely deliver their cargo. Before long, the young man reached his destination. P called out to him, asking from the car if he was pushing himself too hard, but our brave fighter was doing just fine. Soon, he began heading toward the oasis camp deep in the desert, where the real danger started. Under the starry night sky, innocent civilians were already desperately fighting off a sudden ambush of nasty mutants. Entering this tower always threw a player right into the thick of the action. And things were no different this time for the fearless Kang Yooseong. Seizing the moment, the cold-blooded warrior swung his freezing blade, instantly shattering several monsters. One of the panicking survivors begged for help with a monster cornering him, but out of nowhere, splat. Our main character sliced the beast clean in half. Talk about perfect timing. He stood firm, weapon ready. The agile fighter struck with flawless precision and mind-blowing speed. He looked like an absolute legend to the helpless people he just saved. As the chaos finally settled down a bit, an empty can slid across the sand and stopped nearby. The stunned survivors recognized this famous player, having never expected to see him here, wiping sweat from his face. The brave warrior who cared nothing for fame told them they could call him whatever they liked. The grateful locals cheered, believing their god of light had shown mercy by sending his messenger. But the blue-eyed young man got a bad feeling, asking if any other threats loomed nearby. The leading man replied that this was territory of the divine kingdom, meaning they had no need to worry about pagan attacks. He added that their destination was nearby, but the journey would still take 3 days. And here is the catch: he realized he had rushed out here purely on impulse. With his target in sight, the brave fighter smiled and confidently assured them that they could rest easy. As long as he stood guard, no monster could ever touch them. Impressed, the group leader asked the hero how they could repay his kindness. Secretly, our player hoped for a rare necklace of life force to boost his health regeneration speed. Just then, the game system suddenly reminded him of a forgotten gift. He found it weird having to open it manually. Still, the boy opened it and received a high-grade growth stone, his first truly valuable reward in a long time. Deciding to act casual, the level-headed youngster looked around and said that he did not need the jewel right now, deciding to save it. But behind him, a massive swarm of poisonous scorpions was crawling forward quite fast. Summoning his dark beast, the fearless warrior told it that dinner was served with plenty of delicious prey ahead. The hungry beast lunged forward, crushing them easily without letting a single one land a counterattack. But knowing he could not rely entirely on his spirit summon, he prepared an icy spear just in case. He was not taking any chances. Swinging his powerful blade with incredible speed, the young man demolished everything in his way while remaining completely untouched. The weapons moved exactly as he willed them, passing his first combat test with ease. With a constant grin on his face, Yooseong called it a pretty useful skill and kept using it. He crushed the scorpion, showing absolutely no mercy to the vile beast. Fully in his element, he shredded the monsters, while his swordplay suddenly leveled up. The young kid wondered if the nightmare was over. No chance. A voice warned him otherwise as a heavy rumble shook the ground. Suddenly, a massive, grotesque monster burst right out of the sand. It was a colossal, highly destructive sand threat. The adult sand predator bared its fangs, and he knew he was in real trouble. Still grinning, the cheerful player just shrugged. He joked that it looked like his quiet night of sleep was now completely ruined. Remaining completely calm, he turned to his dark obedient shadow beast. The hungry summon unhinged its massive jaw, pure terror. It wanted to swallow the giant predator whole right then. The hungry summon bit deep into the giant worm, spraying foul green blood everywhere. Standing calmly with folded arms, Yooseong decided to join the fray. He quickly unleashed his own sword skills, slicing into the massive target from afar. Dozens of sharp energy blades found their mark instantly. He hit the target with brutal precision, perfect strike. With a faint smirk, he watched the fight while casually guiding his blades. He did not let up for a single second, conjuring even more frozen spears to finish it. The giant sand predator thrashed in absolute agony, completely helpless. Then came the glowing system ping, announcing that his ice sword mastery had leveled up. His control over the frozen blades was now better than ever. Morning arrived, and wait until you see the serious crew guarding this caravan. Knights in heavy armor guarded the cargo, serious business. Clad in heavy steel armor, they marched forward without showing a single trace of fear. Yooseong noticed these elite soldiers hiding among the ordinary merchants. A merchant nearby quietly explained that these were holy warriors serving the god of light. Curious, our main character asked what they had been doing last night. Their only job was to guard the cargo, nothing else. Yooseong was pretty surprised that they refused to leave the wagons even during a crisis. He asked which group they served, wanting to know their faction. The merchant whispered that they actually belonged to the legendary Order of the Bloody Cross. Hearing this, one of the grim knights glared back at the smiling boy. He clearly found Yooseong's relaxed, cheerful attitude highly suspicious. Yooseong sarcastically asked if they were guarding a priceless golden calf inside those wagons. The stern knight told the young messenger to back off. He warned him to ignore the wagons, mind your business. With absolute gravity, the stern knight told him to focus on his divine mission instead. But the warrior's cold attitude only made our hero grin even wider. He had absolutely no intention of letting this mystery go without getting some answers. Sensing their strong holy auras, their heavy secret burden was clear. This hidden mission was far more dangerous than any of them actually wanted to admit. Yooseong confidently told the knight that his warning only made him curious. The merchant sitting right beside him could only sweat nervously and pray for some peace. Anxiety sets in. The curious young man wonders what cargo requires. Such tight security, the serious knight next to him remains dead silent. Bound by strict rules, he cannot simply jump into active combat. The nervous man wearing a hijab desperately prays, no fight, just peace. But peace is not coming. Kenyon suddenly grabs him by the neck. and drags him back without a word, manifesting his cold frost magic. To build a solid shield, fully focused, the young hero yells out. Everyone needs to get down right now if they want to live, raising his barrier. The boy stares ahead, a black rain of arrows is flying their way. The volley hits, two deadly shafts strike a guard straight in the neck. Killing him instantly, panic erupts, people scream about the sudden, brutal ambush. They are under fire from a massive horde of heretic archers with longbows. No one understands this. How dare these heretics cross into the sacred kingdom? Yet the enemies do not stop. They keep charging forward on horseback. Hunting for every last soul, confused, Khan wonders about their play. Will the Knights of the Bloody Cross counter this swift hit-and-run assault? The commander barks orders, do not let them touch the artifact. Hold your ground, keep the position. Everyone activate those mana shields right now. Arrows still pierce through. Several defenders fall, mortally wounded in the chaos. The hero realizes the grim truth. The knights do not care about the civilians. Gritting his teeth, he draws his sword. We protect ourselves, he says. We defend our own golden calf. The tower raid objective is clear. Keep the caravan safe. Deliver the sacred package in one piece. Scanning the enemy lines, the clever youth looks for an opening. Just 10 meters away, a dangerous mounted archer sits on his horse, his bow fully drawn, locking onto the sprinting target, keeping his cool. The warrior readies an ice spear to shut this sniper down, the horseman. Wrapped in a heavy cloak, laughs, such weak attacks cannot reach him. Sure enough, the spear misses. It plunges uselessly into the dry dirt. Wait for it, this missed throw was exactly what he wanted. He had secretly channeled a shadow technique to trigger a massive trap. An explosion erupts, the horse collapses, launching the heretic high into the air. Leaping high into the sky, the bold fighter tightly grips his freezing dagger. Ready to end the threat, he lines up his strike midair. Aiming directly for the throat to leave his enemy no chance of survival. But in a split second, Yooseong's pupils shrink in sheer shock. The heretic's mask falls off, revealing a face he never expected to see. Lying on the sand is a desert elf, shivering in complete, hopeless terror. The panic is real. The young hero quickly shakes off his surprise and tries to think, what should he do with this enemy now? Suddenly, a sharp arrow flies straight at them from the side, demanding quick action. He conjures a wall of ice, shielding both himself and the wounded elf. Looking closely at the projectile, he wonders if heretics also harness aura. But the bitter desert elf suddenly swings a curved, sharp sickle, aiming. To kill the outsider, our hero reacts with a quick slash of ice. Flicking his sword, the brave warrior easily knocks the weapon out of his opponent's hands. His shadow beast looms right behind him, just waiting for the command. Holding the blade to the heretic's throat, he demands to know what is in the cart. The furious heretic asks how he dares try to manipulate him, then screams to his allies. He tells them to ignore him and fire their arrows. The desert elves instantly obey. They let loose a volley, hoping to overwhelm the enemy through sheer numbers. Still, the fearless fighter keeps his grip on the big-eared hostage, using his shield. He remains completely untouched. The sweating hostage sneers that they won't get any info. No matter what he does, they will never pry a single secret out of his mouth. The blue-eyed warrior simply tells him to reveal what is inside the cart. He needs to know the truth so he can figure out which side to actually take. Suddenly, he shoves his hostage back, asking if they seriously think he can't wipe them out. Instantly, the icy barrier shatters. Sharp frozen shards fly in every direction. A deadly ice storm, threatening everyone nearby. This display panics the hostage. The cool-headed warrior asks if the elf understands. Specifically, what will happen to his companions if anyone so much as lifts a finger. The stunned elf realizes this mysterious stranger is on a completely different level. Once more, our daring hero demands to know what is being carried in that cart. The heretic gasps, asking how he dares refer to Princess Syria as a mere thing. Talk about a massive slip of the tongue, everything suddenly clicks for him. He tells the elf to go back to his friends with a very generous offer. He will spare them. The heretic refuses, but our hero asks if dying is better. Isn't it much better to walk away with a second chance at life right now? Hearing this, the big-eared elf silently gets up and trudges back toward his allies. He makes his choice. Within a minute, the desert elves mount up. They gallop away, retreating, but the tension is far from over. The Knight of the Bloody Cross immediately confronts the fearless messenger of light, Canoe. He demands to know why Canoe let those dangerous heretics escape with their lives. The young fighter calmly replies that he has to verify something first. As our hero turns to leave, the confused knight demands to know what that means. Another mounted soldier blocks his path, demanding to know where the boy thinks he is going. Canoe simply repeats that he has to check on something, but the soldier refuses to yield. Even as the messenger of light, he cannot pass. With a dark smile, Yun warns him. He politely tells the man to step aside, reminding him that the shadow beast is waiting. Feeling the terrifying pressure, the intimidated knight backs off, though he is deeply frustrated. He watches in anger as the insolent youth approaches the cart without permission. Ignoring the protests, our calm protagonist swings the carriage door wide open. But inside, you won't believe who is waiting for him. In a remarkably calm voice, the young man asks if she wants him to save her. She is a striking lady in a brilliant red dress, heavily bound in tight handcuffs. Biting her lip, the beauty asks if he really thinks she needs his pity. She has no interest in getting sympathy from some random, unknown foreigner. As the proud Princess Syria of the Ayub Kingdom, she refuses to beg a stranger. Suddenly, a divine warning echoes. The god of light commands his messenger to remember his duty. This powerful warning hangs in the air. The attentive young man listens closely. He instantly spots the glowing system notifications, pausing in surprise. Gripping the freezing dagger, the player remarks that since she asked so nicely, he simply has no choice. With a heavy strike to the iron chains, he shatters her bonds, freeing the princess even though she never requested his rescue. This reckless act triggers a hidden condition to save Syria, who is completely stunned by his unexpected intervention. For his sheer guts, the warrior earns 300,000 achievement points, shocking every knight on the field. Suddenly, the raid objective shifts, and the difficulty level of the tower spikes to hard mode, but that only makes him smile wider. Smiling, Kangan notes that the game is ruined, but calls freedom amazing. A divine voice warns him he will pay for defying the holy light. As radiant, yellow-winged angels begin to descend from the sky, instantly, the tower turns on him. Celestial defenders suddenly materialize. To execute the sinner, these light guardians serve their creator blindly and enforce order wherever the sacred light can reach. But now, the enemy commander raises his blade to the sky, roaring that they must execute this heretic. Our smug hero just shrugs it off, noting that they only got brave because their backup finally arrived. Meanwhile, the terrified princess asks what on earth he is planning next. He tells her to stay calm, he has his own backup coming. And that is why he is so relaxed, stepping in front of Syria. He gets a system alert, saying the Shadow Ruler approves of his move. The Dark Council grants him a buff of absolute darkness, prompting another sharp smile to spread across his face. Suddenly, the royal soldiers panic. Over the pitch-black shadows as their morale instantly plummets, our hero knows the rewards are way better here, completely ignoring the knights. Watch this. Instantly, a volley of sharp bayonets skewers the enemy ranks. Before they can even process the attack, in their final moments, many can only stare at the helpless celestial beings above them. These holy messengers never saw this slaughter coming, but they refused to back down. Furious, one of them begins praying for light to deflect the incoming blades and restore visibility for his troops. The other celestial beings join in, desperately trying to banish the encroaching darkness. It is an exhausting task, and it quickly infuriates them as high-speed sonic attacks disrupt their holy focus. Their leader snarls in rage, desperate to crush the annoying brat, blocking their path, but he tenses up when the glowing light vanishes, and a freezing steel blade suddenly slashes toward his face. Before he can even react, the divine warrior is caught completely off guard as the brutal sword strike threatens to slice him in two. His allies watch in absolute disbelief that a human dared to touch a sacred being, yet our hero is already blitzing through the air. He zips from side to side, a blur of motion while his broken opponent tumbles down. Kangan remains cold, not caring about the divine consequences of his actions. Then, another system alert rings. A system alert pops up. The Light Guardians now absolutely despise him. Their hatred is permanent. Luckily, his standing with the Shadow Council skyrockets. His faction rank climbs, bringing a dark, satisfied smile to the daredevil's face. With his affinity for darkness boosted, he can finally see what he wants. But then a sudden system warning flashes. Things are about to get complicated. Countless massive organizations are now closely watching this lone warrior inside the tower. It is a massive deal, forcing even someone as bold as him to feel slightly cautious. After all, the Knights of the Bloody Cross and the Elves are dangerous native entities. But their true power belongs to a far higher scale of existence entirely. As a player, he is basically a bridge connecting these two different worlds. He is the key conduit, allowing higher rulers to interfere down below. Yet these tower warriors are not just loyal dogs blindly following emperors. They have their own agendas and search for deeper, hidden truths. Thinking back, Kang Yooseong remembers the captive elf he had previously interrogated. Inside these walls, players make their own moves, ignoring outside opinions. Just as our guy predicted, opposing the light guarantees better Shadow Council rewards. He knows that once you have a solid plan, there is no room for hesitation. Even powerful rulers cannot easily break the fundamental laws that bind them. And right now, only 5 emissaries of light are left standing. One of them is already aiming a deadly throwing spear at him. But Yooseong does not care how many gods or observers are plotting his demise. He has exactly one focus, and that is reaching his goal. The enemies rush him, but he knows they are bound by the system. Since they are only on the 5th floor, 8th-level angels cannot descend. Those are the absolute rules, yet the remaining emissaries are still absolutely furious. They despise the dark energy and desperately want to purge him right now. Golden spears rain down, targeting the incredibly agile warrior. One massive projectile misses and smashes a cart nearby. Innocent refugees are huddling there, terrified as another stray spear strikes. It hits a wounded knight, crawling on the ground directly in the back. Screaming in agony, the bleeding soldier desperately tries to pull the weapon out. He gasps, asking his own light messengers why they would betray him. Smiling, Kang Yooseong thinks to himself that this is incredibly brutal power. This level 9 angel clearly does not care about saving its followers. He notices the surrounding refugees are treated with the exact same disregard. There is no room for complaints here. Suddenly, his vision sharpens. The boost is incredibly strong, but there is a major catch. This dark veil does not differentiate between ally and enemy. The stronger your darkness resistance, the less it drains your active stats. Dodging another lethal projectile, our warrior notes that his foe is formidable. Golden flaming spears continue raining down, striking the abandoned knights. These men believed in the light, only to be completely betrayed. From the sidelines, Princess Syria watches anxiously, praying he survives this chaos. But then a sudden male voice whispers, pleading for her forgiveness. The unexpected plea instantly puts her on high alert. Making her look even more beautiful, the fearless warrior scooped up the girl and bolted. As massive explosions thundered behind them, remaining completely calm, the young man summoned his dark beast to give it a crucial command, but as he struggled to handle everything alone, he ordered his loyal pet to eat the pink crystals and guard Princess Syria. It was actually a high-grade growth. Stone packed with a massive amount of experience, ready to transfer to its chosen target, gripping the rare item tightly in his fist, the player decided to activate it on his dark beast. Suddenly, glowing fragments and crystal ash rained down on the obedient creature. Watching this, the panicked girl screamed out to the stranger to watch out for danger, right as massive, blazing projectiles came flying right at them, yet he kept feeding his dark beast as if nothing was wrong, fully prepared to strike back and repel the attack. Terrified, the princess had already accepted her end, and clenching her fists tightly, she shut her eyes and waited for the impact. Suddenly, the massive beast, clad in thick steel armor, shielded them with its own back, saving their lives instantly. A hail of sharp spears slammed into the impenetrable armor, completely failing to pierce through, but the onslaught did not stop, and even more deadly projectiles rained down, yet none could break past. Their guard, grinning, Kenius prepared his shadow blade, knowing everything was unfolding exactly as he planned. The furious messenger of light roared that the boy could never hope to touch them, making all resistance utterly futile. The horde of angels relentlessly pressed their attack, unaware he had already prepared a few flying daggers of his own. One of the holy entities quickly conjured a shining sword of light, ready to meet his challenge head-on. Our hero held his ground, expertly deflecting the strikes with his frost-coated blade, and keeping himself perfectly safe. In the angel's eyes, the sharp, icy daggers flew straight at him. The battlefield dissolved into pure chaos, which played perfectly into the hands of our cunning protagonist. He wanted to disorient them. The Messenger of Light kept slashing wildly, but the agile youth managed to leap aside completely unscathed, still fighting so many foes up close. Gradually threw him off his rhythm, forcing him to keep weaving through attacks while clenching his teeth in frustration. He wondered how long he could keep this up. Suddenly, the alert fighter snapped his head to the left, catching the sound of an incoming blade. A swift angel lunged and slashed Kyuso across the shoulder, sending a sharp jolt of pain through him, but this minor setback did not crush his battle spirit, and he instantly rolled to the side. To reset his stance, he gritted his teeth, wondering why these enemies were still so incredibly fast. Despite their heavy debuffs, the winged creatures kept diving at him from every single angle, forcing him to deploy his ice shield. The quick-thinking player covered his blind spots completely, keeping his eyes locked on every hostile target, closing in on him, yet a split-second miscalculation cost him another shallow cut, but he stood ground. Having to constantly dodge was getting highly irritating for the stern Kana, but the desperate battle left him no other choice. Our hero realized it was time to wipe them all out in one single blow and began plotting his counterattack. To survive this, he knew he had to unleash his forbidden shadow ability. Since he had no other option, the agile warrior began dodging side to side. The holy messenger scoffed, asking if he actually expected them to let him go. He was drenched in sweat. One single mistake now meant instant death. Then disaster struck. In one split second, Yooseong was caught off guard. A follower of light thrust his glowing spear forward, piercing him straight through. Pure agony, searing pain ripped through him as he bit his lip. The damage was done, and there was absolutely no way to fix it. No escape. Trapped and helpless, he was completely at their mercy. They closed in. Yellow-winged angels swarmed from every direction to end him. This was it, the leader screamed, to seize their only chance. Tear him apart. He ordered his squad to shred the enemy. Cheat skill active. The death deception was 100% confirmed. Yooseong smirked. It worked. His clever deception saved his life. 0 damage. The fatal blow failed, and he located the sword. Track. The system located the sword. Now he just had to wait. Then action. The glowing weapon was ripped right out of his chest. Utter disbelief. The haloed angel nearly fainted seeing him still standing. Stop everything, the panicked leader shouted as things took a weird turn. Too late. Smirking, the hero summoned icy blades and blocked their escape. Unpredictable chaos. Hundreds of frozen weapons rose high into the air. A close call. The trick negated the blow but triggered a cooldown. Cooldown active. He had to wait 720 hours to recharge. Game over. Spreading his arms, Yooseong declared their time was up. Time to exterminate these pathetic yellow-winged pests once and for all. Icy storm. A massive wave of shards flew at the leader. Direct hit. Shards pierced his chest, sending him crashing down. He writhed in absolute pain. Battered and bloodied, the angel desperately fled. High above, Yooseong stood atop a massive sword, commanding the battlefield. Pure panic. The bald angel flew away, naively hoping to escape. Absolutely no chance. The fearless fighter immediately gave chase. Diving down, he jumped off a giant statue with mysterious intent. Mid-air strike. A giant blade shot forward, blocking his path entirely. Impact. The heavy blade crashed into the ground, leaving a crater. Walk over. The young warrior stepped up to inspect his work. Level up. 3 system notifications popped up confirming his massive jump. Fight over. With the battle concluded, his active buffs finally vanished. Absolute carnage. The dead emissaries of light now lay scattered all across the messy battlefield. Silenced, the young warrior let out a long sigh of absolute exhaustion. He had burned through an insane amount of mana and physical energy during this chaotic clash. Looking around, he took a moment to assess the devastating scale of the battle. Bloodied bodies and broken weapons littered the ground next to shattered wooden carts. Suddenly, he felt a small, dark beast gently place its paw on his leg. Glancing down, the hero smiled at his loyal companion to show some affection. The cute, yawning beast had shrunk down, now looking like a harmless house cat. Just then, a stunning young princess began walking slowly towards the tired fighter. Sirius stood there in a vibrant red dress, asking with a heavy heart why he had betrayed his own people and gone so far just for her. The greedy warrior replied that the rewards were simply better on this side, admitting he only cared about money. The princess asked if those weren't his comrades, realizing he was only after her ransom. Money from her rescue. At that very moment, the young warrior was busy stroking a little kitten with his finger, enjoying its soft, gentle purring. Completely calm, he confessed to his opponent. He was afflicted with a terrible disease, absolute hatred for people. Then the young man remarked that the princess's question was rather strange, making an agitated Syria lower her sad gaze. He kept stroking and praising the dark kitten, while the princess watched him silently. Silently, a few days later, the companions arrived on horseback at the busy border of the elven kingdom of Ayub, where many soldiers stood guard. The princess smiled at Yooseong. She said she was greatly indebted to him, thanking him once again. The young man replied that he still needed his reward, and the beautiful royal noted he surely had a way with words. Suddenly, Syria held out her clenched fist, showing something shining inside. She asked the young man to accept this gift. Instantly, the fighter received a system notification that he had successfully cleared the Pale Desert Tower on hard mode. He received a pendant called the Rank of Trust Mark, which was a highly unique and attractive reward. At that moment, its true value remained completely unknown, but the system promised it would definitely come in handy someday. Confused and surprised, Yooseong stared at the sparkling jewel for pondering its hidden properties. The rescued princess of the elven kingdom of Ayub was returned completely unharmed, and after the king's death she would become queen. Right after leaving the tower, Yooseong prepared for his next journey. He set off for Busan by train, wrapped in a winter coat. 4 hours earlier, Park Teek, who was typing away on his computer, told his friend he had to go down there sipping some hot coffee. Yooseong asked if something had happened in that city, but his friend replied that nothing had actually happened yet. Yooseong asked why he should go, and Park Teek said something would happen very soon. Now, Natasha Ivanova was a notorious criminal known as one of the top 4 players. Hiding from the Russian government, she had arrived illegally in Busan, raiding towers with her 4 close accomplices. The woman possessed a legendary ability to create a veil of absolute darkness, making her a prime target. On the phone, Park Teek asked if Yooseong had run into any zombies on the train, but the hunter simply requested a car. Park Teek said he had received intel about the level 5 town hall where Ivanova's group had entered, urging the warrior to head there. This zombie apocalypse tower had a heavy biochemical risk factor and was known for its intense survival mode. Shortly after, Yooseong arrived at his destination by taxi, looking completely calm. The goal of this raid was simply to survive until the time ran out, with 5 players registered. Just seconds later, another player dressed in a sleek black coat remarked that he had entered the tower and was fully prepared to move. At the turn of the century, the pharmaceutical giant, Tiela, deadly virus was discovered in a secret laboratory, forcing the entire city into lockdown. Sensing the massive danger, the young man knew nothing good awaited him here. Survival in this level 5 tower meant dealing with hordes of hungry, bloodthirsty infected. Just minutes after stepping inside the town hall, a horrifying sight awaited him. Kang Yuan spotted an incredibly grotesque monster with human bodies fused all over it. Dodging the attacks with his icy blade, he doubted this was actually a zombie. Suddenly, he froze as dark shadows began creeping in from the corners. From the darkness, a cute little black beast emerged, looking completely out of place. It stared at the hideous creature with admiration, but this kitten was highly deceptive. Thick saliva was already dripping from its hungry mouth, eager to feed. Without warning, the little beast lunged forward. It slammed into the slimy monster. The zombies growled. They growled to scare the pet, but it was completely useless. In a flash, the entire disgusting mass was sucked into the hungry predator's jaws. The cat suddenly swelled to a massive size, completely trapping the prey. It began aggressively chewing on the pathetic zombies, devouring them one by one. Kang Yuan watched calmly, thrilled he did not even have to fight. His hands stayed completely clean, and he noted how much the beast had grown. The growth stone had definitely upgraded the pet, though its new form was quite bizarre. Still, the cute companion smiled sweetly at its master, demanding some warm affection. Just as he reached out to pet it, a red-haired girl approached them. She clapped her hands slowly with a smug smile, which felt pretty suspicious. Wearing a tight tactical suit, she claimed she had been waiting for his arrival. Kang Yuan recognized her instantly, as she called him the hero of her dreams. Standing right behind her were 3 heavily armed soldiers with automatic rifles. This was the notorious black player Natasha Ivanova, mocking him with a smirk. She claimed the brave Kang Yuan could never leave a villain like her alone. Gripping his frozen sword, the calm young man turned to face her directly. He pointed out that she was a highly wanted member of the Red Mafia. She had fled the government after illegally docking her ship at the port. Giggling, she asked if he seriously planned to arrest her and lock her away. Smiling, he shook his head and got his flying swords ready for action. He admitted he had no idea what kind of trick she was pulling. Because of that, he told her to just relax while they sorted this out. Did she really find working for Russian intelligence to be such a thankless job? This bold move completely caught her off guard as she stared in silence. He knew her squad was just a cover to hide her real operations here. Did they actually plan to corner him and feed him to monsters? Natasha charged forward, shocked that he already knew about her secret government ties. Even with that knowledge, he was still foolish enough to face her alone. Smiling confidently, Kang Yuan asked if she seriously thought he would become zombie food. He explained that there was no other way to steal her legendary skill. That stolen power was the sole reason he entered this dangerous territory. The agile girl leaped backward, barely evading the sharp blades slicing the ground. Grinning, she commanded her guards to open fire and eliminate him immediately. To attack the young man she completely underestimated, her men immediately opened fire with their automatic rifles, kicking up massive clouds of dust. But the daredevil easily managed to dodge. The quick-footed Natasha Ivanova moved away. From the line of fire to flank him from behind, her loyal squad kept shooting, pinning him down so he could not even raise his head. The fearless warrior stayed focused, dodging side to side without letting a single bullet graze him. Finally, he closed the gap on the red-haired vixen and leaped forward, ready to strike her down. But suddenly, the green-eyed girl made a rude gesture at him, flashing an incredibly annoying smirk right in his face. The stunned young man froze, his grand offensive completely halted by his clever opponent. Leaning on his frozen blade, the quiet warrior landed and knelt, quickly adjusting his plans. He realized the red-haired brat had already managed to slip away, yet a faint smirk played on his lips as if this was precisely what he wanted. Meanwhile, the mercs kept firing their heavy machine guns at his back, but he calmly raised his shield, blocking every single bullet. The tricky warrior darted in different directions once again, searching for Natasha to finish her off. Swinging his sword, the player muttered that while that trick worked once, something felt off here. As far as Yooseong knew, the absolute darkness debuff should have been blinding everyone in the area. With a smirk, he wondered how the gang could still shoot at their target. Right then, a cute dark shadow beast was sitting on his back, meowing as its claws scratched repeatedly against his heavy armor plates. Looking at the little creature, Yooseong realized what was happening and knew he would need help. Hearing this, the playful shadow kitten purred happily, ready to carry out the commands of the master. Back in the fight, the panicked gunner warned his squad that the shield was too tough, demanding a quick shift in tactics. Suddenly, he noticed a black cat behind him, letting out a soft, suspicious meow. In an instant, the mercenary was run through with pitch black shadow blades, collapsing to the floor before he could even register the pain. The next soldier was targeted too, but got lucky when the dark blades clashed against his rifle instead. Suddenly, the shadow of the small beast expanded rapidly across the battlefield, posing a massive threat. One of the terrified soldiers screamed for everyone to get out of the shadow, warning them they would die otherwise. Yooseong smiled at the chaos and felt a bit surprised they could actually see the dark outline. Suddenly, a sharp blade was pressed against his throat by Natasha Ivanova, who had snuck up from behind, yet the smirk remained on his face. The red-haired girl warned Yooseong to play nice, because his life was entirely in her hands now, but the clever guy just smiled and asked if a real killer would talk so much, prompting her to snap back. She warned him not to underestimate her elite intelligence network before shifting the topic to the massive tower achievement points he had just earned. The sheer amount of points was highly suspicious, and everyone knew he had defended the town hall under crazy odds. But what happened next? He had only taken on low-level missions lately, just like last season. Meanwhile, the vicious dark beast kept tearing Natasha's allies apart, leaving no room to strike back. Gently taking the lovely Natasha's hand, the young man smiled softly and asked her to answer one simple question, gripping her blade tight. The calm fighter asked how she planned on killing him if he was fake. She did not hesitate for a second, immediately slashing her blade across his neck, only for the illusion to dissipate. This shocking development deeply unsettled and angered her, as Natasha had never faced such an elusive opponent before. Suddenly, several of Kusion's frozen blades pressed firmly against her throat, making any movement tantamount to instant death. The clever youth believed that from the absolute start, this veil of total darkness was just a clever trap designed to lure him into the open. He knew she had created this illusion to blind his senses. And hearing his calm deduction only made her grow increasingly anxious. He added that because this technique only targeted his senses, she had only one real choice. Finally, Kusion revealed that her skill was actually a legendary illusion, a masterclass trick designed to control exactly what her target saw. Hearing this, the red-haired fighter dropped her dagger and froze in utter shock. As the blade hit the ground, it glowed bright red from extreme heat, warping into a melted mess. The alert Kusion unleashed his defense, summoning massive barriers of solid ice around him. Still conscious, Natasha Ivanova slumped to her knees, a tiny cut bleeding on her neck. He noted that while she was excellent at deception, it clearly was not her actual combat strength. In a chilling tone, he told her that now she would be the one turned into zombie food. Extending his hand, Kusion prepared to strike again, only to receive a sudden alert that his target had already died. He did not understand what had just happened, pausing his assault to analyze the bizarre situation. The razor-sharp tips of his ice blades froze inches from the trembling girl's head. Right then, a flashing red warning popped up on his screen, stating that secret forces had located nearby survivors. Suddenly, a hostile drone hovered overhead, scanning for life signs in the ruined sector of Zone B. With termination orders issued, Natasha's startled comrades spotted 3 heavily armed soldiers on a rooftop. They immediately decided to run as those elite troops closed in on them. Suddenly, a colossal robot armed with a devastating blue energy blaster blocked his path entirely. He stood frozen in place as the machine's cold voice announced that a classified protocol was underway while the massive unit scanned him thoroughly. At that moment, a brilliant explosion erupted, its blinding yellow light filling the entire screen. And Kusion received a system alert that another player had died. The tense fighter wondered if he should immediately drop his defensive ice barrier and counterattack, but the giant machine was already preparing its next strike. It let loose a devastating energy blast, sending a wave of panic through him. He shielded his face, bracing for the deadly oncoming shrapnel. Trying to plan his next counter, he realized this slow war of attrition was getting tedious when suddenly a massive clock materialized in the air. Dumbfounded, Natasha Ivanova stood speechless at the sight of this bizarre phenomenon. Unable to react, she watched as a strange little girl suddenly materialized nearby. The child sighed, pitying the 2 dead players who wasted their leftover achievement points. Pointing a small finger straight at Yooseong, she calmly declared it was all his fault. Chuckling, the young man offered a mock apology and asked how he could make things right. The little merchant offered to forgive him on one condition: he had to buy her cards. He needed to purchase the yellow card set in his hand, since shop hours meant no fighting. Still, the constant brawling outside her shop made her sad, so the little girl pointed out that Natasha Ivanova had the highest score after her uncle, urging her to spend them. Otherwise, she would die with them. Hearing this, the panicked woman almost burst into tears. Realizing death was inevitable, the little merchant quickly assured her she stood no chance. To survive, she absolutely needed to buy a deck of cards and pray for luck. Drawing a mythical card would save her. The girl then advised the smiling Yooseong to purchase a pack too, but he calmly claimed he could get cards on his own. Surprisingly, Ivanova declared she would blow all 374,000 points. Her massive amount of achievement points thoroughly shocked the young man beside her. She decided to gamble everything on random ability decks, a highly risky, desperate move. Getting quite bored, Yooseong quietly watched the entire unfolding spectacle without saying a word. The anxious woman slowly opened the packs, but the first 2 cards were basic. Having drawn nothing but ordinary trash, she got increasingly anxious over the next few minutes. Only a single rare card dropped, and even that was practically useless. The tiny merchant urged her not to lose hope, insisting she would eventually strike gold. She guaranteed a mythical drop. Biting her nails in absolute panic, a nervous Natasha was seriously beginning to doubt she would ever hit the jackpot to escape alive. Watching this, the bored Yooseong casually mentioned a famous saying about watching houses burn. He found her misfortune quite entertaining, while the unlucky Ivanova pulled more garbage cards. Only common abilities appeared, which was starting to make her blood run hot. A barrage of identical, useless system alerts flooded her vision, forcing her to stay calm. Clutching the very final pack in her sweaty hands, she took a deep breath. The little seller told her to have faith, while Ivanova silently prayed in her head. She desperately needed at least one legendary rank pull to stand any chance of survival. Otherwise, she was dead. Unfortunately, the Russian spy pulled absolute trash and lost it. She literally slammed her head onto the asphalt and started punching the ground furiously. The girl casually asked if she wanted a potion with her last 4,000 points. Smirking, Yooseong noted her business was officially done, but the kid turned to him instead. She pressured him to buy, prompting him to ask why she was so desperate. Given those sudden deaths and Natasha spending so much, the luck pool had shifted. She was confident a legendary card was practically guaranteed now, sliding a card box forward. The box held dozens of pristine card packs. She begged her uncle to buy just one. She guaranteed he would pull something incredibly valuable. Right then, a system alert popped up saying the ruler of hell was shocked. A surprised Yooseong chuckled. He refused to buy. Absolutely livid, Natasha Ivanova began screaming wild insults. She cursed the young man and the little brat. Surprisingly, Yooseong actually agreed with her. The kid deserved the scolding, but her sales pitch was actually quite convincing. So he agreed to buy a single pack. Instantly, a massive system notification flashed. Kyushin just pulled a card for the Ice Arrow ability, which he already possessed. The system then asked if he wanted to fuse them and level up his skill. He immediately said yes, eager to see how much stronger it would get. An extra perk from the 2 skill stars now lets his projectiles pierce armor. That was a pretty solid upgrade. Now our hero had to choose his next step. He decided to address Natasha first, but she was already red with pure rage. The angry scout barked at him in Russian to just shut up and listen. A bit confused, he asked if that was her native tongue, but the saleswoman interrupted. Promising they would meet again, Kyushin tried to stop her, but it was too late. She vanished into thin air, leaving him alone with the terrifying red-haired girl. While Natasha kept throwing insults, a massive robot suddenly lumbered up right behind them. Then a whole squad of heavily armed thugs closed in on the surviving players. Their orders were simple: wipe them all out. One soldier loaded a massive electric gun, announcing that they were currently executing a highly classified secret protocol. They had to eliminate every single witness who had drawn attention to their location. But before they could act, a sword flashed through the air. The cold-blooded Khan sliced right through the head of Natasha, finishing her on the spot. Without wasting a second, he dashed forward at blistering speed to wreck the robot. Standing right before the giant mechanical beast, the completely emotionless, cold-blooded fighter quickly scanned its heavy metal body, instantly pinpointing its weakest spot. His strike was so devastating that the head of the giant electric monster popped right off. It bounced away like a soccer ball, but then the enemy soldiers rushed toward Kyushin. The young man immediately fought back, unleashing a barrage of throwing blades at them. He managed to keep the enemies at bay, escaping without a single scratch. Then 2 heavyset soldiers teamed up to charge a lethal electric blast. Suddenly, a massive explosion tore through the area, shaking the ground beneath them. Remaining completely calm amidst the chaos, the brave fighter leapt away in time. He cheated death yet again, leaving his frustrated enemies with absolutely nothing. With his signature smug smile, Kyushin realized that Tyela possessed some serious wealth. He casually thought it might be smart to buy up some of their pharmaceutical stock. Before returning home, the fierce warrior prepared to strike. He twisted his palm, summoning his frost powers. It was finally his turn. Raising his hand, the boy with the brilliant smile declared something very important. He definitely would not be investing in the doomed company right here. With a single snap of his fingers, he sent countless sharp ice blades flying. The enemy robot was totally frozen in place, completely baffled by what just happened. It had absolutely no idea what to do as razor-sharp ice crystals shredded its armor. The deadly shards tore deep into the soldiers. Even the surveillance drone overhead got caught in the crossfire, losing its signal and crashing hard to the ground. The thick steel plating on the giant robots shattered into pieces instantly. Sharp metal shrapnel flew everywhere as a spectacular explosion ripped through the ruins. And just like that, Kyushin cleared the brutal zombie apocalypse tower, earning a random gear coupon. Better yet, the system lets him steal a special ability card from the loser. Grinning, our overpowered hero declared that he did not even need to browse his options and instantly claimed the Oculus. After using the coupon, a blinding yellow light begins to spread around as a human. Scream echoes nearby. With the tower cleared, the surviving players finally find themselves back in their own world, and even those who lost return alive. The pensive hero remembers that 2 mercenaries died at the hands of the Dark One, while 2 others were too badly injured to escape the collapsing tower. But that only happens outside the town hall. Surprisingly, even Natasha Ivanova made it out alive. Before leaving, the brave man waves goodbye, saying, "They did a great job." Exhausted and upset, the lady can only wonder how things went so wrong when she had complete confidence in her team. Turning back, the young man tells her she can go turn herself in at the nearest station. Honestly, it is none of his concern. The tense girl calls out, asking if he's really just going to leave her there without any help. Coldly, he tells her to go report back. Go tell her people what an amazing hero the king is, and stop fooling around. After all, dead men do not talk. He needs her as his messenger to pass on the message. On the phone, Park Tesk asks why he left them alive. Why leave them alive? He calls it compensation for his legendary skill. The angry man shouts, demanding to know why he let his attackers sneak away completely untouched. Calmly, Kang Yooseong replies that he is no psychopath. He tells the old man to relax. After all, nothing bad actually happened. The nervous gentleman grumbles that the boy is too good at talking, then asks why those freaks targeted him. Park cannot understand why he cares so much about this eccentric bully, but the hero reminds him of one simple fact. The old man's cafe is still open, and it is only thanks to him. His friend warns him to be careful heading home and not stress himself out. Smiling, the young man promises that everything will be fine and thanks his old friend for checking in. Inside, players get many names. They call him the alien, the apostle, or the legend Kang Yooseong. It is the exact same out here, where he is seen as a living weapon or a symbol of terrifying military power. He is basically a living, unbalanced cheat technique. It sounds totally bizarre, but it is true. Yet these are no simple soldiers. They are legendary heroes of war. They deserve unmatched respect. They strike down their enemies without hesitation. And for this, Natasha Ivanova serves as the absolute perfect example. Feeling a slight chill, the young man wonders if society expects him to become like that too. To him, true heroes simply do not exist. But guess what? Some random passersby across the street instantly recognize the king. Quickly pulling his hood up, he sighs. He was far too careless. Since this morning, across the street, a tense guy tells his girlfriend not to point at the king because he is a dangerous thug, but she quickly assures him that it is just an act. She insists he is actually a savior. She claims that without him, the world would have ended long ago, and that he even secretly donates his t-shirt sales to charity. Her boyfriend scoffs that it is all for show, making Kang Yooseong smirk nearby. However, before the main character can reach his house, he gets intercepted. An interview with reporters was completely unavoidable. Keeping his cool, the player glanced over. He decided to make a break for it, so he immediately took off. He headed straight toward the Tower of Swords and Magic, an adventure waiting for him. The ultimate goal was to beat the storyline, and our hero wanted to rest up first. Finding a quiet spot inside made sense, since he was already heading there anyway. All around him, locals celebrated the successful ceremony of their prophesied holy warrior. The mention of a holy figure stopped him cold. He thought about it. That legendary title sounded incredibly familiar. A robed woman suddenly stepped before him. She looked thrilled to finally meet the legendary warrior who had answered their prayers. This was the kind and lovely Alicia, the 37th martyr of Celestine. Standing in the kingdom of Celestine, the young man smiled to himself. He laughed inwardly. Instant calm washed over him. Shaking her hand, he confidently introduced himself as a world-saving hero who gets results fast. He asked how he could help, and the saintly girl realized she had to explain first. She needed to break down the current state of affairs across their continent of Phalia. The player assumed that their big crisis was a simple demon war. But Alicia quickly corrected him. The truth was far more terrifying. She revealed that dark entities supposed to be sealed in the underworld were escaping. These vile monsters had actually launched a massive invasion into the world of light. 30 minutes later, Kang Yun was completely exhausted from listening to her endless backstory. He asked if they could finally go save the world from the demon threat already. But the saint replied that her people feared humans abusing the power of the arch. Because of that, our main character would have to pass a dangerous trial first. Folding his arms, the young warrior took a second to weigh his options. There was no point staying. Turning silently, he began to walk away. He spun around to leave, making the panicked maiden call out to him. He calmly stated he was heading out to handle the mission on his own terms. Alicia tried to block his path since he had no idea where the arch was. Kang Yun simply asked if she knew where it was located, keeping his cool. He pulled away. Keeping his cool, he continued on his way. But the alarmed Alicia refused to let him go just like that. Out of nowhere, a massive crimson portal tore open right inside the holy chamber. Dark energy spilled out, and a massive skeletal hand pushed through the tier. A pair of long horns emerged. This was bad, really bad. Watch this, the saint stepped closer as sheer panic washed over her face. She screamed in absolute shock, wondering how dark beasts could reach this sacred ground. The temple guards immediately drew their blades, ready to cut the beast down. Shouting that demons have no place here, they charged straight at the monstrosity. The massive creature swung its colossal claws, trying to tear the warriors apart. No effect, their swords bounced harmlessly off the giant monster's hide. The beast taunted them, leaving the holy knights completely frozen in panic. They could not understand why their sacred magic was completely useless against it. The giant demon slowly charged a blazing fireball right in the palm of its claw. Seeing this, the fearless Kang Yun stepped forward and ordered the guards to retreat. He told them to get back, while a terrified Alicia watched in horror. Terrified for him, she screamed for someone to help the warrior, but a knight held her back. He insisted that he didn't need any help, urging everyone to take a step back. He then raised a massive icy barrier to keep the terrified citizens safe. A bearded man kept the saint from rushing forward, telling the hero to be careful. He was risking his life, and the anxious girl couldn't shake her deep panic. The fighter was putting himself in mortal danger for them, dropping to her knees. She clasped her hands over her chest and fervently prayed to the goddess. The crowd joined her prayer, except for the knights standing guard to protect them. They had to stay alert. Then, out of nowhere, the icy wall shattered. The anxious crowd turned their eyes to the heroic king. The person carrying Alicia quickly asked if Kang Yun was hurt, but he stayed silent. He just covered his face with his hands as the demons sent telepathic messages. Using his own voice to declare this hated, bright world would soon burn. Everything would plunge into darkness as a splitting headache tore through the young man. The terrifying demonic voice warned him to get out of their way and leave. Drenched in sweat from pure panic, the holy maiden was completely lost. She had to think of something fast. The stern warrior spoke up, saying they had no time to waste and asking Alicia where the arch was. Standing on the verge of tears, she couldn't believe the end was finally here. But she had a solid plan. Within moments, she was riding her horse out fast. She galloped across the bridge, knowing they had to act without wasting a single second. Behind her, Kang Yooseong smiled, glad they were finally picking up the pace. It was time to get down to business, the smiling young man whispered to the dark creature on his lap, praising its perfect imitation of the demon. As it turned out, the little beast had pulled off an incredible performance. Fooling those saints was honestly way too easy. The black kitten meowed sweetly at its master, who gladly gave it plenty of affection. He always supported it. Bennett decided to wait a bit before using the shadow blade, keeping things subtle by asking the tiny monster to hide its spikes. Alicia, leading the way on her horse, asked if they should slow down. But the warrior simply told her there was absolutely no need for that. He knew following his exact plan was the only way this would work. This was how you properly wielded such an insane, legendary power. His skill Oculus let him control exactly what his targets could see, though it didn't play well with high-level crowd control skills. Before long, they arrived at the Adventurers Guild, a pretty plain building. The polite young man noted that rumors pointed to a way inside. They had to secure an item to actually gain entry into the labyrinth. The lady immediately realized he was talking about a searcher license. The beautiful receptionist asked them to wait and handed over ticket number 216. Taking their place in line, they sat down at a table and looked around. They saw heavily armed fighters everywhere. In a low whisper, she leaned in. to tell him that this city, Garcia, was known as the Land of Vortexes. It was a neutral zone right between Queen Celestine and the Dra Empire, sitting right above an ancient underground labyrinth, smiling, the cheerful young man. He muttered that they couldn't have picked a better hiding spot for the kingdom's ancient weapon, the arch. Right then, the receptionist girl suddenly called out for room 216. That happened to be the number of the young man who had just stood up. A polite lady handed them a form and a quill, asking the youth to sign. Sweet Alicia immediately moved to sign without a second thought. But the sharp-eyed Kang Yun quickly stopped her, reading the fine print. It freed the guild from liability for deaths, and he asked if signing was mandatory. The blonde receptionist replied that they simply offered everyone equal opportunities. Great fortunes always came with matching risks in this line of work. She stated that it was entirely their choice, making the saintess hesitate. Taking the quill from her hands, the calm young man gave a dry chuckle. He noted that this disclaimer showed the true value of life here. The yellow-eyed beauty behind the desk simply wished them luck. She took back the signed papers, and soon our duo moved out. They entered a creepy ancient labyrinth, illuminated by eerie blue lanterns. The fearless warrior suggested they start, asking if she was ready. She confidently gave him the green light, but danger was already lurking. Suddenly, a swarm of bloodthirsty rats ambushed them out of nowhere. Reacting instantly, the brave swordsman thrust his blade straight forward. He jammed the cold steel into a monster's gaping mouth, stopping the bite. Alicia kept her cool, channeling her fire magic at the filthy pests. A leaping rat was decapitated midair, completely missing its target. The lovely girl mentioned they were starting the 5th floor already. They were descending through this maze at an incredibly fast pace. Kang Yun smiled, praising her excellent combat skills and powerful magic. Alicia added that they had seen fellow adventurers all along the way. Other groups were busy fighting beasts, which cleared their path forward. She felt grateful, but Kang Yun knew there was a catch to this. He figured they were just trespassing on some local guild's private hunting ground. Clapping her hands, the cheerful girl joked that cooperation makes monsters less scary. The calm protagonist warned her not to let her guard down just yet. He promised to guide her safely all the way to the ancient weapons. Just then, a hostile crowd blocked their path, led by a brute. A bald, burly man carrying a massive axe stepped forward to greet them. The scarred thugs sneered that they dared to enter their territory without paying up. Completely unfazed, Kang Yun asked if these were the thugs she feared. He wondered what kind of bottom feeders they were dealing with here. Every dungeon had them, ruthless criminals who specialized in murdering other players. The massive thug laughed, confirming they were indeed hunter-killers. He demanded to know if the boy was ready to surrender all his gear. Alarmed, Alicia desperately tried to negotiate, hoping to avoid a fight. But our hero had absolutely no intention of bowing down to trash. He smiled, saying a friendly chat was fine, and offered a story. He began explaining that in the beginning there were Celestines and demons. And then the young man made a bold declaration. A savior from another world, but to do his job, he has to find an ancient, lost weapon. Locals are completely baffled, so the young man explains he is searching for a sacred arch. And he is doing it alongside the 37th saint of the Holy Kingdom of Celestine. With a polite smirk, the charming hero asks if they would kindly step aside and let them pass. The beautiful maiden quickly chimes in, pleading that this is all for the sake of world peace. Silence takes over the area as the rough adventurers just stare back in disbelief. Their eyes remain locked, trying to process his bizarre claim. With a loud laugh, the bald thug mocks the boy, calling him a pathetic little kid. His bandaged ally sneers, calling him completely delusional. He laughs that fear must have broken the boy's mind, making him spout absolute nonsense. Alicia looks on in dismay, realizing these thugs have absolutely no interest in talking things out. Now their immediate future looks incredibly dark, clenching his jaw with growing irritation. Yooseong grunts, finding this entire situation exactly as ridiculous as he originally feared. A scarred bandit mumbles a threat, but our hero has officially run out of patience. Ignoring the chatter, he summons his frozen blade and prepares to end this fight. Unwilling to waste another second, the quiet warrior lashes out. The scarred thug freezes in sheer terror as blood sprays from his newly severed arm. The bald giant swings his heavy axe in retaliation, but his counterattack gets instantly shut down. Wounded and bleeding, the brute roars in rage and hurls his weapon. But he misses completely, leaving him empty-handed and absolutely furious. Suddenly, a tiny portal tears open nearby, and a mysterious female figure begins to emerge. Resting a massive glaive casually on her shoulder, the dangerous lady steps into the light. She coldly demands to know who gave this stranger permission to mess with her crew. With a dark smile, she admits the boy is clearly more dangerous than he looks. She warns her men not to underestimate him, but her face looks incredibly familiar. Wait, it is the exact same polite blonde woman who is working the guild's reception desk. Alicia gasps, asking if she works for the guild and got lost in this deep maze. The innocent girl genuinely believes she is lost, completely blind to the dark truth. While Alicia remains confused, our calm hero immediately pieces the cruel trap together. He explains that the guild uses these ruins to trap rookie adventurers on purpose. They trap rookies in deadly spots, then force them to buy their way out. If the unfortunate victims cannot pay the massive fee, things get much worse. Their very bodies are sold off. Hearing this, the pure saint panics in absolute horror. Her eyes go wide with shock. Overwhelmed by the cruelty, she shields her face. In a shaking, tearful voice, she asks how anyone could commit such a terrible crime. The wicked blonde simply laughs at her innocence, telling her to face the harsh reality. This is how things work in the labyrinth city, and there is no escape. With a sudden war cry, the boss swings her heavy glaive directly at our hero. But our quick protagonist effortlessly blocks the heavy blow with his frost sword. Stopping her dead in her tracks, he keeps his signature cool expression. Flashing a calm smile, the hero warns his cocky opponent to watch her step. Sensing danger, the boss quickly spins around, looking for any hidden traps. That is when she notices a dark, ominous shadow stretching out right behind her. Turns out our hero's mythical beast has entered the battle, summoning deadly shadow spikes. At first glance, it looks like a normal black cat, but its true power is terrifying. Its red eyes and menacing glare suggested otherwise, but barely a minute later, the dark beast flashed a grin, signaling that the worst of the horror was finally over. Then, calmly, Yooseong told the terrified Saint Alicia that the path was clear for their journey. The girl quietly followed after her fearless companion, noticing a crude, makeshift barricade just ahead. Before long, she remained sitting quietly near the crackling fire, while the scout monitored the surroundings from above. Leaping back down to his companion, the young man explained that they would camp there overnight and resume their trek at first light. It was easy to see that the bright-eyed beauty was not the same as she was. At the beginning of their trek, the watchful hunter chose to bring up how gloomy she seemed after their violent encounter with the bandits, asking if it was true that she struggled to face the harsh reality without her grand title of saint. Feeling quite anxious, Alicia murmured that the entire world was on the verge of destruction, yet people foolishly fought one another. She then turned the question on him, asking if he was already completely used to it all, as if it were just an ordinary day. Yooseong calmly admitted he was not so sure about that, recalling how Lin Songho once said the world always demands heroic survivors. Remaining perfectly calm, the overpowered player briefly muttered that the harsh world is the same no matter where you run. Feeling a bit relieved, she quietly pondered his heavy statement. Looking at the beautiful dancing fire, she decided to ask about his home. Suddenly lost in memories, Yooseong began. His city had actually survived multiple apocalypses, he explained, noting that nobody really knew how to react during the initial chaos. Alicia softly apologized if bringing it up was uncomfortable. The experienced fighter brushed it off, explaining that by the third apocalypse, he had fully adapted and fought fiercely right alongside his allies. Yet, when he finally opened his eyes, it became clear that everyone was only looking out for their own selfish survival. That dark realization had troubled him ever since. Alicia listened closely, softly asking what the young man chose to do next. Cracking a subtle grin, he asked in a quiet tone what the stunning saint herself believed he did. Following his unexpected question, a heavy silence fell as the saintess deeply pondered the heavy question. For a while she struggled to find the words, terrified of upsetting her strong companion. Then she softly opened her mouth, making it obvious that she had formulated her thoughts. Whispering her honest reply, the beautiful blue-eyed girl watched him closely. Yooseong's face instantly shifted, clearly not anticipating such a blunt take. Suddenly he burst out laughing, calling her theories completely wild, but did not push further. Before long they sat in comfortable silence, lost in their own thoughts while trying to unwind. Our Weary hero could not quite understand why everything was so completely still, since he expected it was already time to prepare for departure. Out of nowhere, a young brown-eyed merchant appeared, asking if he would care to purchase a card. From her, amused, Yooseong asked to look over her catalog of wares first. Since he was already sick of gacha card sets, days later, after reaching level 100, the brave hunter crossed paths with several loud demons screaming about capturing some sacred stone arch. A massive starving serpent blocked his path, widely parting its giant jaws in. With its pretty disgusting, slobbery mouth, Alicia stayed focused, putting her hands to her chest to beg the goddess for mercy. Meanwhile, the dark beast used its sharp spikes to keep the bloodthirsty creatures from getting anywhere near the praying saint. At the same time, the brave Yooseong launched himself upward, leaping straight into the predator's massive, open jaws. While holding his sword, without a second thought, he swung his icy blade, dealing some serious damage. Immediately, the red-skinned demon shrieked in agony from the blow, entirely helpless against his assault. As her life faded, she begged her demon god to forgive her betrayal because she had failed to retrieve the bow. The exhausted hero breathed heavily, muttering about how tired he was, but right then he gained 10,000 achievement points and leveled up. Still, the annoyed warrior did not understand why these demons showed up after his trial. Honestly, talk about terrible timing. Genuinely thrilled Alicia quickly praised the exceptionally brave warrior for wiping out so many monsters alone. Suddenly, a bright emerald light enveloped the pair out of nowhere, catching the saint completely off guard. The young woman gasped, realizing this was definitely the long-awaited arch. Yooseong quietly remarked that it seemed far too simple for an ancient weapon, though he still managed to obtain its glowing white fragment. The excited girl then brought up the labyrinth, urging him to clear it quickly. Keeping his cool, Yooseong noticed a glowing blue silhouette nearby and figured that must be their exit. Alicia declared they had finally made it out, feeling immensely relieved that the whole ordeal had not taken them very long. But then a familiar voice praised the saint and the otherworldly warrior for doing such a fine job. A blond man wearing heavy knight's armor said that their hard work made securing the imperial arch much easier for him. With a smug smirk, he insisted that the weapon's power belonged in his hands and demanded they surrender it immediately. Yooseong quickly realized this newcomer was hostile, while a worried Alicia recognized him as the first prince of the Drago Empire. The young lord offered to spare their lives on the condition that they hand over the arch, but Alicia refused, stating its power must only protect the world from demons. Brandishing a purple crystal, the prince firmly declared that once he collected all the fragments, the devils would bow before his absolute will. He mocked them, claiming the quest item practically delivered itself, but noticed the hero looked completely clueless, so he decided to stop talking and ordered his imperial knights to attack. His soldiers immediately drew their heavy blades, while the prince yelled that the time had come for them to prove their true loyalty and valor. Raising their weapons, the knights marched forward just as a sudden system alert announced a brand new scenario. A critical warning flashed, confirming that the first prince of the Drago Empire and his elite guard were here to seize the arch's power. The fearless warrior unleashed a relentless barrage of strikes, while his ally cast crucial spells. St. Alicia immediately blessed him with a powerful holy defense buff, along with sacred armor, magic enhancement, and an aura of valor. The imperial knights didn't flinch, charging forward with cold determination. But oh boy, a terrible fate awaits them. Ice blades slice through targets with deadly precision, piercing their chests and leaving zero chance of survival. Terrified, one soldier shouts that they must retreat immediately before they are wiped out. Clenching his fists in anger, the bitter prince activates his ability to save them. He wanted to gather the ancient weapon fragments to strike down his enemies, but it was too early. Suddenly, a screen pops up in front of Yooseong with a critical alert. To his shock, it reveals that Milva's Drago is using the ancient bow. Sensing danger, Yooseong warns the saint about the threat that lies ahead. Attempting to keep his cool, the brave warrior quickly conjures an icy shield to keep the enemies back. Everyone freezes as Milva's Drago suddenly mutates into a massive beast. Terrified, his comrades check on him, but the monster only glares back with bloodlust. With one brutal swipe of his claws, he severely wounds his own men, mocking them as useless garbage that must clear the way. Panicked fighters begin to scatter, in all directions while Kyushin calmly asks Alicia to refresh buffs. Smirking confidently, he starts to summon a set of freezing armor. Stronger than solid steel, next he instructs his comrade to use the earthquake and fire potions, sending violent tremors through the ground. The massive demonic beast that Milva's became is suddenly trapped. Inside a roaring ring of fire, terrified to move, Kyushin charges forward, circling behind the giant beast to find a vulnerable spot. A heavy strike with his sword cuts deep into its back, catching the beast completely off guard. Grinning, the mutated first prince grows even more enraged at the warrior blocking his path. He roars, asking if this pathetic kid thinks he can survive inside the blazing flames, but Kyushin only flashes a cold, knowing smile. As freezing vapors begin to roll out, the furious mutant is completely bewildered as thick layers of ice rapidly encase his body. Leaping high to strike from above, the warrior mocks his enemy, asking if his cheap new power-up made him completely blind. With another crushing blow, he inflicts brutal pain on the helpless titan, who has absolutely no time to react. Fatally injured, Milva's collapses, coughing up blood with zero chance of survival or victory. Kyushin calmly pulls his blade out of the monster's chest. Exhaling slowly, the system alerts him that he has successfully acquired the quest item, which is the second fragment of the arch. Surprised, Kyushin looks down at the smoking remains of the mutant. He mutters, wondering what kind of cheap mobile game cutscene this is. Right before his eyes, the ancient weapon fragments begin to merge. The fusion looks incredibly spectacular. The process is over quickly, leaving the party to watch in awe, holding their breaths. Alicia stands jaw-dropped, staring at the completed arch they followed. With a satisfying smirk, Kyushin realizes this is the perfect ending. A system alert pops up. He's finally hit level 50 and can enter the Tower of Awakening. Our polite hero tells the Saintess that the battle is finally over and she can finally hold the sacred bow. The excited Saintess then asks if he really wants her to take this legendary weapon. Kang Yuzhen asks who else could possibly wield it, but she feels completely unworthy of possessing such incredible power. He asks if she's worried about those traitors from the Drago Empire, making the beautiful Saintess even more nervous and unsure of herself. But our brave hero gently reminds her that it is far better she uses the bow for good than to let fools have it. Still, Alicia can't help but hesitate, refusing to treat such legendary power so lightly, handing it over. Kang Yuzhen decides to share some wisdom. He says power-mad fools who ruin everything are usually crushed by the weight of responsibility. But she won't fight alone. Alicia freezes in her tracks. She looks closely at the sacred weapon she has sought for so long. Clutching the bow to her chest, she smiles and thanks Kang Yuzhen, saying his kind words have lifted a massive weight from her shoulders. He's just glad to hear it. Right then, his system issues a clear notification. He has successfully cleared the Tower of Swords and Magic with her new weapon. Alicia stops the demonic forces, saving the continent and placing absolute trust in him. Sometime later, Kang Yuzhen is relaxing in his room, thinking that finishing that tower raid would earn him a nice break, but he relaxed too much. A whole week flew by. Meanwhile, the web is exploding. Rumors are spreading fast that our hero king might clear every single tower this year. Leaning back, Kang Yuzhen mutters to himself that it's only mid-January and it's only mid-January. He still has far more important things to do. Days later, he's jogging down the street when a strange sight catches his attention. A massive crowd of reporters is swarming the area, desperately hunting for an exclusive interview with the legendary fighter 2, spotting Kang Yuzhen. They charge forward like a wild pack, but our player slips away into the nearby town hall. The confused reporters have no clue where he went. No tracking info exists. Just moments later, the shocked journalists realize our daredevil must have entered the highly anticipated Tower of Awakening. Suddenly, a mysterious voice echoes, "I've been waiting for you." The legendary kid with 1,000 faces and talents, opening his eyes, the calm warrior cuts through the dramatic speech and demands they start the trial immediately. Instantly, countless mirrors materialize all around him, while the voice chuckles at how incredibly impatient the young player is. Unbothered, Kang Yuzhen stands silently, waiting for the test to begin without showing a shred of fear. The trial master, copying Kang Yuzhen's form, smiles with glowing red eyes, stating he was already planning to start. Suddenly, the surrounding mirrors reflect our hero in various intense battle stances, proving he excels in every single form of combat in a flash. Those glass panels shatter into pieces, plunging our hero into deep darkness. He takes slow, steady steps forward. The glass crackles pleasantly under his boots as he keeps his guard up. He kept a cool head, waiting silently for the ruler who loved to prolong the game. Behind a creepy clown mask, the ruler asked if the young man was even surprised. Such extreme calm was rare, showing absolutely no emotion. Yooseong simply stood his ground. He manifested dozens of sharp ice blades, pointing them directly at the masked foe. Beside him, his clone did the exact same. The tension spiked instantly. No turning back. In a flash, both sides unleashed their icy weapons. Right behind the storm of ice, the fearless Kang Yooseong charged straight ahead. He gripped his sword tight. He knew exactly where he needed to strike. They clashed, blades rang out as both moved side to side with lethal speed. Both were elite. Through it all, the clown ruler kept up his annoying smirk. The clown swung his weapon wildly, but his flashy moves did not rattle Yooseong. Our hero stayed completely calm. He knew this opponent was nothing but an illusion. It mirrored his moves perfectly. Undeterred, Yooseong kept firing ice shards. The fake kept dodging them. Still, Yooseong fought with everything he had. He felt a deep unease. One wrong move here would mean instant death. His shadow beast lashed out with spikes. The clown parried them cleanly. Deflecting every hit, the clown watched as the agile Yooseong leaped high. The clone kept smiling mockingly. Suddenly, Surfima's shield materialized. It deflected the heaviest blows, keeping the young warrior safe in tight spots. He remained completely unharmed. A passive blessing also saved him here. It deflected a sudden, fatal blow. Yooseong capitalized on the opening immediately. They backed away, trading ranged attacks once more, but neither could land a hit. Feeling the pressure, Yooseong decided to summon a powerful dark beast for help. A warning popped up. Summoning familiars was completely banned in this zone. His trick failed, making him highly anxious. But wait, everything was actually simple. Yooseong refused to back down, continuing his relentless barrage of sharp ice blades. He believed he could win this. Tightening his grip on the hilt, he charged. Lunging forward with absolute focus, he knew exactly what his next move was. His icy glare locked onto the target. He had only one shot at this. Time to end this. He delivered an incredibly powerful strike straight ahead. The blade pierced the clone's stomach, going clean through to the other side. Grinning widely, the bloody fake asked why Yooseong looked so incredibly serious. Even as it bled out, the clown chuckled and spoke of Yooseong's future. He muttered that Yooseong could easily become a celebrated hero or a terrifying villain. The choice was entirely up to him, and Yooseong stood covered in blood, listening. With a casual wave of his hand, the dying clone muttered his final words. He whispered that absolutely nothing in this world should ever be taken seriously. Suddenly, the clone charged again, perfectly mimicking Yooseong's every fast movement. But Yooseong smirked, muttering that he knew a magic trick to shut it up. The clown kept smiling, completely unaware of what was coming next. In a flash, Yooseong slammed his open palm directly against that ugly mask. A sudden explosion erupted, and the headless clone finally fell silent for good. Blood splattered across the cold floor, leaving nothing but an eerie silence behind. In Yooseong's calm hands lay the blank white mask of his defeated clone. Without hesitation, he slowly raised it, placing the mask firmly over his face. Gripping the freezing blade tightly, he asked firmly if this was the one he needed to deal with. A massive ruler appeared, urging the child to accept his brand new face and master talent. Soon after, an anxious Park Taek rushed down the hospital corridor, feeling a heavy wave of unease. With a trembling heart, he burst straight into the ward where Kang Yooseong lay resting quietly, as if absolutely nothing had happened. The winded man gasped for air, staring intently at the young hunter. The completely calm youth looked up from scrolling through his digital holographic screen when he spotted his old friend. When asked where the get-well gifts were, Park Taek smiled, saying that judging by his sharp tongue, he was already feeling better. The sarcastic young man told his buddy to cut the act and stop trying to preserve peace throughout the world. The young hero asked if they seriously expected him to work with a gaping hole in his chest, but Park Taek was sure he had swallowed a healing potion already. The hunter complained the injury felt weird, while his friend noted that his personal ruler was quite peculiar, so the awakening process was bound to be different. Scratching the back of his messy hair, the quiet young man muttered that It wasn't that serious, but remember, level 50 awakenings are completely different. For every hunter depending heavily on their godly ruler, since he conquered his own limits, Kang Yusen unlocked a unique master talent, meaning all those cards and stats he accumulated before were his to keep. He had it all. This was his chance to break his limits. Suddenly, the system asked if he wanted to use the merger to replace his skill with a 2-star. Oculus, the hero, got exactly what he wanted, so everything was fine. From Park Tiek, he learned that his next job was tracking down and thrashing a rogue player. He said that actual criminals were pretty rare lately, showing him a video of a vicious serial arsonist. This psychopath loved hearing victims scream, finding their terror soothing. To his ears, waving his hands, he forced the helpless crowd to shake as roaring fires warmed his wicked soul. The absolute maniac viewed himself as a grand maestro, declaring he would guide the blind world through his fiery art. Terrified screams of panicked onlookers echoed down the streets as emergency trucks struggled to reach the blazing inferno. Right at that chaotic moment, the godlike Lord of Flame was thrilled, showering the crazed Baek Dong-soo with massive rewards for his destructive acts. The psycho screamed that only his patron truly understood his brilliant art. As heavily armed officers crept up from behind, the fearless lunatic simply spun around, muttering that pathetic insects with useless weapons had come to play. The cops froze instantly as the maniac unleashed another blazing wall. Netizens went wild, discussing how this monster suddenly joined the level 4 tower, while our brave Kang Yusen climbed the stairs. Terrified onlookers saw there was a strict player limit inside the Colosseum, meaning only one would survive, but our level-headed hero stood gazing at the raging wildfire, his gut screaming that this monstrous player was no savior. He knew for a fact that Baek Dong-soo was just burning the world for fun, cementing him as an absolute psycho. Without hesitating for a single second, the determined young man strode into the tower, ready to hunt the madman down. Spectators roared from the stands, keeping their eyes glued tightly to the battlefield, where the mad arsonist stood waiting. The self-confident maestro was ready. He turned to his opponent, asking what kind of fool dared face him. But looking closer at his rival, the gray-haired man's face suddenly shifted. Stunned for a moment, Kenyon grabbed his freezing blade tightly. Calling the freak a pure psychopath, unfazed, Baek Dong-soo just laughed, saying that only a heroic king could truly appreciate his grand art. Kenyon realized he was dealing with a complete lunatic, unable to comprehend why the world had so many freaks. His insult deeply wounded the maestro, who stared down at the floor, his expression slowly twisted by rising fury. Reddening with anger, he conjured fire again, screaming at the kid brat dared look down on his grand art, treating it like absolute trash. The dangerous power of his Hellfire Orchestra erupted, but the brave youth swiftly leapt out of harm's way. The twisted artist drew his flute, blasting direct streams of raging fire right at Kenyon. Smiling, the hero noted how these weird artists always worked alone, showing off by themselves. Losing his mind, the furious Baek Dong-soo tried to execute the king instantly, but Kenyon smoothly retreated, completely untouched by the flames. Enraged, the arsonist summoned a massive kettle drum directly over his target. The giant golden instrument plummeted straight down, crushing everything in its path, trapping Kenyon completely under its heavy weight. But suddenly, a miracle occurred. The mighty warrior shattered the golden drum with a single devastating slash. Charging at the stunned arsonist, Kenyon closed the distance in a flash. He sneered it would take way more than that to trap him. Time to end this. Yet the lunatic refused to surrender, ready to fight to his absolute limit. But mid-strike, Kenyon smacked his head right into a stray golden plate. Halting his attack, Baek Dong-soo burst into mocking laughter, gloating that they had co-created the ultimate artistic masterpiece together in battle. Suddenly, Kenyon smirked, whispering a quiet but deadly warning under his breath. Peering right behind the arsonist, he unleashed a swift, brutal slash, revealing that the copy hit earlier was just his afterimage. Kenyon felt impressed that the crazy artist actually dodged his lethal blade. Even so, a fresh cut opened up on the villain's neck, making him break out in a cold sweat. Since illusions are not supposed to speak, resting his weapon on his shoulder, Kenyon smiled, claiming he was not about to explain his secret tricks. Turns out, the Oculus ability allowed him to manipulate his target's senses, completely distorting reality. Anything he controlled was designated as absolute essence. Glaring coldly at his trembling foe, the warrior threatened to summon, creating an army of identical clones to completely overwhelm him right there, declaring that this would be Baek Dong-soo's final performance before dying. Dozens of clones brandished their weapons, driving the panicking villain to knees, but the creepy gray-haired madman only kept up his grin, refusing to go down without one final, desperate struggle, conjuring a massive blaze, screaming at the top of his lungs that his precious art would never perish. Kenyon shielded his eyes as a massive, blazing shockwave ripped through the area. Moments later, the smoke cleared, and a glowing digital window popped up before him. Notification flashes before the stunned young man. His objective was finally accomplished. Now he had to pick his exit, but having two options complicated the entire task. Since the system prevents killing opponents inside the tower, Yooseong had to finish him outside. He decided to corner the bastard in the French city of Calais. The teleportation was instantaneous. Within seconds, the young hero materialized in a stunningly beautiful plaza. Perched high on a building, Yooseong spotted Baek Dong-soo's panicked back as he fled. The old man was running for his life, but the relentless hunter knew. The slippery snake was cornered, proving his gamble had paid off. With absolute focus, the legendary ranker leaped down from the roof, straight toward his target. The bastard naively hoped to escape. Mid-plunge, Yooseong swung his frost-coated blade, dead set on executing the coward, terrified. The panic-stricken maestro did not stop for even a second, but Yooseong was completely unfazed. The cold-blooded hunter lunged forward again, targeting his fleeing victim's head. Baek Dong-soo kept sprinting with everything he had, pushing his aging body. But Yooseong was already closing the gap, ready to deliver the final strike. As he slashed down, his blade suddenly collided with an invisible, rock-solid barrier. Not in the plan, confused, he carefully scanned the area ahead. To his surprise, standing nearby was a squad led by a striking girl in a short skirt. The charming blonde offered a polite smile, asking Yooseong to lower his weapon. Yooseong kept his guard up, staring down the massive shield dome she maintained. He complied, immediately asking the blonde saint what she was even doing here. This was Maria Jaeger, commander of the Order of the Knights of Salvation. She dismissed the barrier, explaining that the French government had requested their help to investigate the rogue dark player, so they had been waiting on standby. Maria let out a soft chuckle. Yooseong smirked, asking if she was here to help him gut this vile arsonist once and for all. But she flatly refused, stating she could not let him murder Baek Dong-soo. She calmly explained that lethal force during an arrest was highly restricted. Yooseong scoffed, muttering that she sure loved playing the righteous saint. He kept pushing her buttons, reminding her of her own past words about her favorite phrase, that revenge only begets more revenge. Maria shot back, just because the vile musician acted like a monster did not mean the hero king had to sink down to his level. Yooseong shrugged off the warning, but Maria insisted she was only looking out for his future, asking if he truly understood the sheer weight of his actions. A high-profile assassination like this would spark a massive global backlash. Meanwhile, the desperate musician tried to break the barrier by setting everything on fire. As they argued, a massive inferno erupted, engulfing the small courtyard. Yet the dome held strong. A bit confused, Yooseong asked if attacks from inside the barrier were not supposed to breach the outside world. Maria remained perfectly unfazed, repeating that her only goal was protecting him. The villain was officially captured, and this dangerous situation was finally over. Her order would escort the prisoner away, meaning the weary hero could finally rest. Yooseong stared intensely at the trembling old arsonist he desperately wanted to slaughter. But he couldn't. Sheathing his frost blade, he calmly backed down. Since the saint herself had asked, he had no choice but to back down and walk away. He grumbled that coming here was a total waste of his time. Maria watched him leave in silence, but then a purple shadow crept beneath his feet. The battle was far from over as razor-sharp bayonets suddenly aimed straight at Baek Dong-soo. He lay helpless on the ground, but Maria Georger knew exactly what her ally could do. Without even looking, the saint blocked the spears. Easy. A sweet smile graced her face as she told him not to even bother trying. Exhaling wearily, the young man stopped resisting, realizing he could not strike his enemy. He quietly muttered that this was bound to happen anyway, making his peace with it. Meanwhile, a worried Maria Georger quickly turned her attention back to the captive criminal. The helpless musician lay trapped inside a massive mouth, surrounded by razor-sharp teeth. A blue-eyed girl watched the horror unfold, breaking into a nervous sweat. Terrified and lost, she watched a woman step calmly through pools of fresh blood. Walking through blood, she headed straight for Khan. He stayed totally calm, raising his hands even as her blade touched his head. The sword pressed against him while the fighter pushed his taunts even further. As provocation spiked, the Clown King lost his mind, leaving our hero completely surrounded. Trapped on all sides, Khan asked if they knew how many lives this monster took. He reminded them that children were among the victims of this absolute madman. No mercy, the hero refused to spare such a vile scoundrel. There was no reason to spare him, and the surrounding crowd listened in silence. These dark players were wrecking their world much faster than any dungeon tower. An anxious Maria Joerger began to pray as another player voiced a dark rumor. They asked if anyone who pierced the beast would turn into a monster themselves. Showing zero fear of the consequences, Khan calmly accepted whatever fate had in store. But out of nowhere, the Blonde's guild members lowered their ready weapons. Maria Joerger stepped forward and placed her hand gently on Khan's shoulder. She looked sincerely into the eyes of her opponent, speaking with genuine warmth. She softly assured him that he was no monster, and the blue-eyed boy just stared. With that, they let him go. Everyone quickly dispersed. Back home, he got an angry call from Park Tak, who screamed through the phone. The stressed young man replied that his parents would kill him if things went south. He defended himself, asking why it mattered when the boss ordered the arsonist's death. Park Tak snapped back that the boss never said to execute the target in broad daylight. He added that the French government was practically begging to have their king returned. He already booked a flight for tomorrow night, but Khan refused, claiming he had business. Park Tak demanded to know what other crazy stunt Khan was plotting this time. He simply replied that even heroes need a personal life. Before the manager could scream any further, the young man abruptly hung up on him. Taking a deep breath, he turned and thanked the girl sitting in his room. Khan added that he was deeply in her debt, thanking her for the crucial help. It was the least he could do, and he refused to take no for an answer. Relaxing on the bed, Maria Joerger smiled warmly and said she was glad. The polite young man assured the beautiful saint that she should make herself comfortable. She happily agreed, noting that they would meet again first thing in the morning. In Paris, the main character realized she knew how to keep her distance, and the tense woman just stared back in silence. Before she walked out, the young man wondered if she had anything else left to say, making the blonde freeze, smiling. Sweetly, the blue-eyed woman replied that she had already shared everything. Wishing her companion a good night, the stunning saint then stepped out of Khan's room and paused for a quiet second, completely lost in thought. Feeling uneasy, she wondered whether she should have ever asked the heroic king for such a massive favor. Up in the 6th level of the Revolutionary War Tower, the player was dealing with constant system crashes, and even the store went down. Talk about worst timing ever for an emergency raid. And right on cue, several criminals were fleeing through the streets in highly elegant carriages. Hot on their trail, the fearless Yooseong chased them down, protecting himself with a shield while wielding a frozen blade. On the run, the agile warrior threw lethal projectiles at those enemies, leaving them in desperate need of healing. Our hero was deadly serious and completely focused, knowing there was zero room for any mistakes. He pointed out a bridge just ahead where they could easily cut off the escape route, and according to their mission, they had to safeguard the royal nobles from the rebel army. Suddenly, the daring player leaped incredibly high, and Marie Joerger was already waiting on that stone bridge. His allies stood ready to fight for as long as they had to, perfectly matching the pressure of the crisis. In the opening moments, the stone bridge got half blown apart, making it impossible for anyone to cross. Now the soldiers of the Revolutionary Army found themselves trapped, completely unable to move forward. With a smirk, the powerful warrior dared them to step up, fully ready to unleash a devastating counterattack. Just then, the enemy commander ordered his men to hold their fire, acting as if he wanted to settle things without bloodshed. This man calmly confronted the newcomers, asking them what business they had in Paris. The question threw them off entirely. Then the officer asked if they had not been battling alongside the revolutionary forces for the true spirit of a new world. He firmly declared that their only real hope of winning this war lay in the return of the saint. Crying tears of deep frustration, the commander looked visibly broken and asked why she would ever refuse to fight for a righteous cause. He could not fathom why Marie had chosen to stand with the corrupt, noble royalists. The cold-blooded Kana asked if that was why Marie needed his help. Though she was too stunned to answer him, showing absolutely zero emotion, the young man instantly realized that this war-torn world was not his comrade's first experience here. With a gentle smile, the sacred beauty confessed that it was indeed her first time in this fifth-level tower. Still, she had boldly fought with the rebels to secure liberty, equality, and fraternity for France. Those famous ideals rang familiar to the young man, and she mentioned that the historic revolution shared that exact slogan. The youth pointed out that the very people who fought for justice were now enemies of Marie, leaving her feeling like an absolute hypocrite. Looking up, the blue-eyed girl explained they had to defeat these soldiers to access the 6th-level tower and clear the zone. Inhaling deeply, the determined warrior confidently stated that they would do whatever it took to break through and conquer the next stage, his burning battle. Spirit brought a warm smile to Marie, who softly thanked Kana for standing by her side. With a swift gesture, the fighter conjured a massive barrier, and the squad captain turns back to face his unexpected guests, but suddenly, an icy blast hits the captain, sending him flying in agonizing pain, shocking his nearby allies. Meanwhile, the fearless Yooseong just stands there smiling, amused that their attacker actually had the nerve to call them guests. Getting ready to strike again, he casually asks Maria who they even are. The bruised captain announces the bridge is gone and orders his men back, desperate to stop any more of their blood from being spilled. But the squad leader refuses to run, swearing he will fight to the death. He suddenly dons his heavily reinforced knightly armor, ready for battle. Determined to fight to his absolute limit, his heavy plate begins to radiate a blazing blue aura, flooding his body with incredible raw power. Inspired, the other soldiers ready themselves and prepare to unleash their magic. Their fiery leader proudly shouts that they will die fighting for their freedom. Unleashing a fierce barrage, the guards open fire directly at the two intruders, pinning them down completely with an absolute hail of bullets. The massive shockwave blasts Maria aside, but the calm Yooseong does not panic. Using her sacred faith, the saint shields her partner. With Seraphim guarding them, she provides as much support as she can. Meanwhile, Yooseong weaves through the battlefield, easily dodging a barrage of bullets. As he closes in on the leader, his holy armor's blessing surges. The stat multiplier spikes to 1000%, catching him off guard. Suddenly, time completely slows to a crawl, but he keeps his cool. Gripping his frozen blade, Yooseong unleashes a storm of razor-sharp ice crystals. The deadly ice shards rain down, instantly putting his enemies on the defensive. He suddenly remembers that this specific dungeon level always plunges into darkness, right as Maria is pushing her abilities to their absolute limits. She shouts for him to fall back and let her handle everything. But her confident look quickly fades. Total darkness sweeps across the room, making it nearly impossible to see. Panic sets in as Maria completely freezes, desperately yelling out for Yooseong. He does not answer, silently tearing through the blind soldiers in the dark. It is clear that the 6th level is on a whole different difficulty. He expected a challenge, but fighting in pitch black is another story. Still, he keeps his focus and yells for Maria to raise her shield. Hearing his voice clearly, the saint immediately activates her divine barrier. She completely concentrates, locking her focus onto the threat. Desperate, she begs Yooseong to somehow disperse this blinding absolute darkness. But Yooseong just smiles, telling her she does not even need to fight. He confidently swings his frozen blade, cutting down enemies in the dark. Leaping onto a massive shadow beast, he yells that her passive buff is enough. Flash of a smile, he reminds her of the party setup. Since all their experience points are shared 50-50, she can just relax. Dumbfounded by his casual attitude, Maria just stands there and watches him. She silently marvels as he completely decimates the waves of monsters alone. Looking back with a grin, he tells her that her support made it easy. It was already done. Around Yooseong lay a crowd of dead soldiers from the revolutionary army they had been dealt with swiftly. Maria closed her eyes and decided to remain silent for a moment, realizing everything was over. Now all that remained was for the players to get off the bridge. There was no point in staying there anymore. Reaching out his hand, the brave Yooseong asked his comrade to grab hold, but her sad gaze remained lowered. The young man told her they had to catch up with the Fat King. There was no Time to waste, he asked if Maria understood that it was all in vain. If the city they were fleeing to fell, even so, Maria settled herself onto the giant beast, telling him he did not have to do this. But the young man replied that it was great fun. Yooseong said that with the strength the hunter gave him, he would kill everyone for her, adding that there might not be another chance. Maria wrapped her arms around his waist so as not to fall, whispering that this was not why she asked for a favor. The brave Yooseong confidently declared that he was already on the job and doing all of this for her. Then he rushed into the burning city. A fierce fire was spreading around, causing buildings to collapse like wet sand. Merciless soldiers fired at fleeing civilians, screaming that the enemies of the revolution must die. A cruel officer on horseback shouted that these were the direct orders of the iron-blooded duke, who commanded that even children should be spared no mercy. Soon, Yooseong and Maria arrived in the town, finding bodies of innocent civilians scattered everywhere. Shocked, Maria could not believe such a horrific tragedy was happening in the duke's town. She could not understand why the revolutionaries refused to spare the innocent and killed everyone in their path. Gripping his sword, the brave Yooseong said this was the brutal reality of any ideology, adding that the same fate would have met the villagers of the settlement they just fled. Suddenly they received a critical warning. The Lord's personal guards, those iron-blooded soldiers, were blocking their path. Smiling, Yooseong called it ironic that these forces were no longer fighting for a cause, but were simply murderers. Snapping his fingers, Yooseong confidently declared that in a few minutes everything would change and summon the dark abyss. Very soon, a notification flashed that the noble faction had secured an incredible victory, and that Yooseong had successfully cleared the Tower of the Revolution. He also accomplished the feat of clearing it on his first attempt, earning a set of skill cards and a random artifact as his reward. When it ended, the excited reporters begged Maria to tell them about her raid with the Hero King. Another player noticed that Maria was not in the mood and that getting any statement out of her right then was impossible. Still, Maria began talking about the safety of all nations, but Yooseong cut her off quickly, declaring that their night together had been hot in every sense. With sarcasm, he asked what else a man and woman would be doing alone in a tower at night, making Maria freeze. The agitated girl instantly yelled that it was not what the reporters were thinking, but Yooseong smirked, reminding her that she had been pretty happy when they were together up there. Flustered and furious, she realized. Embarrassed to death in public, they screamed at him to shut his mouth. Yooseong's provocation points skyrocketed while the clown monarch lay face down, clutching his stomach on the floor, desperately trying to gather her thoughts. Maria decided to say something normal just to break the awkward silence. Seeing this, the cunning Yooseong smirked, clearly hatching a brand new plan. Right after, the dungeon's ghost rewarded him with a special set of skill cards, while gifting the assassin a deck of rare, higher-tier assassination abilities. In turn, the system's guide granted our young warrior a guide 6th sense, putting a massive grin on his face. Soon, rumors flooded the web claiming that the hero and Saint Maria had spent the night together. Reading the gossip, the sarcastic hunter joked that it was far too late to claim they were just friends. Maria only offered a quiet, mysterious smile, as if she was actually considering dating the world's greatest hero. Before long, the young warriors approached the chilling entrance of the Tower of the Ice Dead, where hordes of terrifying skeletons and a massive frost dragon blocked their path. Naturally, Yooseong flashed his usual smirk, trying to avoid getting sent to the town hall with the saint. Maria remained completely calm, calling him dear and teasingly asking if the mighty hunter had actually chickened out. Drawing her massive, glowing sword, the fearless maiden told him to step aside, fully prepared to take on the entire horde solo. The beautiful maiden joked that after a wild, hot night, one needed to cool down a bit before fighting. With a fierce battle cry, she charged, and in just a couple of minutes, news flashed that the entire dungeon had been cleared of the undead. Stunned, Yooseong could only clutch his face in complete disbelief, barely understanding what had just happened. But a win is a win. Over the next month, the two carried out incredibly successful raids, obliterating one tower after another. On their path, they spared absolutely no one and thoroughly enjoyed every single battle. Eventually, the day of their return arrived. Our main character was already waiting at the departure gate with his bags when Maria approached him. He playfully asked if parting lovers are supposed to kiss goodbye, but the saint suddenly admitted she deeply envied him. She wondered how he remained so carefree, clarifying that she meant it as a genuine compliment. Even so, the charming blonde was glad she had a player she could fully trust. Smiling warmly, Yooseong replied that he was the one who should say that. Promising they would meet again, waving farewell, the beautiful saint wished him a safe flight, and the young hunter headed toward the boarding gate. Before he left, she softly thanked Yooseong one last time, making him freeze in. Surprised, the saint was truly grateful for everything he had done, sacrificing so much of his time and raw power to protect their world. Staring out the cabin window, Yooseong mused that teamwork really is effective, though national interests must always take absolute priority. He considered inviting Maria over sometime, when suddenly his grumpy cat spoke up, asking how much longer the hunter planned on scratching its fur. Yooseong stared in absolute shock, unable to believe the pet was talking. The stern cat simply explained it had evolved, prompting him to ask why it kept quiet until now. The cat told him to just open his reward cards. The encouraged kid quickly did as told, praying that they would pull a hero level. He figured if these cards were this generous, then as soon as they opened them all, they would be unstoppable, adoring eyes shining. His cute cat watched everything unfold as her owner decided to claim the set of unclaimed rewards. While the system opened them, Kang Yun thought to himself that synergy and class were the most crucial things in this game. He already had the first one down, but he still needed the second, which had to be fixed. The brave warrior tapped the digital button on his screen, instantly getting a notification that he acquired the Shadow Assassin class. He finally secured his target, and now the synergy of darkness and assassination perfectly complemented each other, boosting their overall power. Hugging his cat, the hero suggested finding a tower to test his new skills upon their return before wishing her sweet dreams. Sometime later, the hero king stood right in front of one city building, his exact goal completely shrouded in mystery. People could not understand what this daredevil was doing, standing right outside a nightclub entrance in broad daylight, but he silently began to descend the steps. Downstairs, our main character spotted a guy with his face buried in a table, quietly sniffling and kicking the furniture. An irritated Kang Yun shouted, demanding to know if he had checked the clock, since they agreed on 9 o'clock in the morning. The hungover kid whined about having a brutal headache, asking what happened to the loser they were supposed to meet. Raising his hand, the cool-headed warrior calmly started counting down from 3, telling him to follow. The drunk brat threw a glass at him, but our unbothered fighter easily dodged, letting the cup shatter against the wall. The arrogant punk barked back, asking how a mere warrior dared order him around, or if he even knew who his father was. Fuming, the drunkard claimed his dad was the chairman of the O Company, demanding that he show some respect. The fearless warrior smiled, placing his heavy hand right on the brat's head, and told him he was even younger than his father's massive disappointment. Outside, the fighter dragged the arrogant young man away, keeping a firm grip on his hair, while the guy, still in a state of absolute rage, threw endless insults and begged to be let go. Thinking back to his chat with the association director, the warrior admitted he had made a mistake hiring a player, thinking they would be different. Then the director, adjusting his glasses, recommended a highly promising rookie who awakened just this season. The warrior could barely believe this was the same kid, though he cleared the third level tower with absolute ease. The hungover newbie slowly realized that this was the legendary hero king who came to carry him through the 4th-ranked tower, absolutely free. Suddenly, the lazy rookie whined that he was already exhausted from his last run, prompting Kang Yun to note how terrible his attitude was. Soon the pair entered the sinister butcher shop, which served as the level 4 tower, where the dark atmosphere immediately grew extremely tense. Our calm warrior decided to give a quick heads up to the rookie in heavy knight armor, secretly kicking the youngster in the rear while telling him to first prove his skills, sending the kid sliding across the dusty floor. Stomach, the novice looked up and froze. He held his breath. And get this, what lay ahead was horrific, with a giant crowd blocking his path. They were hungry butchers holding sharp cleavers, ready to chop him up. Meat, terrified, the young man scrambled up and bolted away immediately. Sighed, completely lost on what to do. Desperate, he begged Yo to save his life. But Yo remained completely cold, refusing to take advice from weaklings. Covering his head, the sobbing kid screamed that if he died, the hero would suffer too. The elite professional player noticed him, Novice held an incredibly powerful weapon, but had no idea how to use it. He still had everything to learn, and the king knew that reality perfectly. Weaklings always face a sad end, yet the terrified kid still begged for salvation. The calm warrior immediately unleashed his shadow cloning skill. He chose to help. This powerful technique let him control all shadows around him. Shadow Synergy enabled him to activate it 3 times during his skill recharge. He wiped out the butchers in one single, devastating sweep. Kenyon smirked, calling practice the best teacher, but more danger loomed above. Hungry bats hovered overhead, their nasty tongues craving a bloody feast. The fearless warrior quickly summoned his blood spellcaster technique. The novice watched in silence. The spell summoned dark spirits. Using twin copies, he forged sharp, deadly blades directly from enemy corpses. The helpless monsters gasped in agony, caught in a brutal grip. Bloody hands crushed them completely. The veteran asked if the kid needed a change of pants. The bitter kid snapped back, telling him to watch his mouth. He threatened to call his father. The mentor patted his shoulder. He claimed he was just motivating his cute little puppy to succeed. The annoyed boy asked if he just made that up because it sounded totally insincere. It sounded fake. The mysterious fighter simply explained the truth. The kid simply was not ready to hear the harsh reality. The kid was trash, not a player. Suddenly, a deadly skill was activated. This strike marked the victim, massively boosting his stealth and damage output. The kid panicked, asking what happened. The system announced a black mark. The mark landed. Seconds later, his pupils shrank in pure shock. Blood suddenly spurted from his chest, painting the ground red. Kang Yooseong coldly stated that the hero king ignores pathetic scum. The newcomer's life quickly faded away. The hero just smiled. He noted that if this felt unfair, the kid could try defeating him. Later, they returned from the tower, instantly drawing a crowd. The excited young guy eagerly asked what was happening around them. His mentor stayed blank, totally confused by the kid's reaction. The warrior looked down, noting that he killed the player completely painlessly. He asked if the kid still failed to realize that he was dead. Predictably, the angry kid began crying, threatening to tell his father. The threat did not bother him at all. Chuckling, the mentor replied that he would speak to his father himself, making threats useless. Clenching his jaw in pure rage, the kid forced a bitter smile. But the absolute idiot had no clue just how much trouble he was actually in. Stepping closer, the seasoned warrior threw up a middle finger and asked if the kid was seriously trying to put a hit out on him. The fearless kid just scoffed and asked what would happen if the head of the OH became his enemy, noting another freak. Joining the long line of people waiting to die, completely unfazed, K pointed his finger right at the young fool, asking if he honestly thought he was that special. Then he tapped the forehead of the trembling guy, who had absolutely no idea what to expect next. Right then, everyone suddenly received a system notification about a brand new seasonal update for the Endless Maze. To progress, the players had to raid, win, and claim some sweet rewards. When the screen revealed that the Clown Monarch had rewritten the tower rules, Yooseong immediately started heading somewhere, feeling incredibly anxious about it. Being selected to tackle the maze, he was warped away, instantly landing in a strange clearing where bodies littered the floor, clutching his right eye. Our main character cautiously surveyed the area, trying to figure out his next move. Spotting a rookie faceplanting hard on the ground, he silently dismissed him as a spoiled brat. Around him, the other rookies slowly pushed themselves up, looking completely disoriented and dazed. One shocked guy actually gasped, his eyes nearly popping out of his head when he spotted the legendary Hero King standing nearby. A nearby girl, noticing the team mark carved into the stone floor, suggested they cooperate, but K knew this setup was a total trap. Still, it would be a breeze for a powerhouse like him, but get ready because things are about to get wild. Suddenly, a digital scoreboard appeared, drawing the anxious rookie's eyes right to it. They needed to quickly learn the labyrinth's conditions, which could only be cleared by taking down the final boss, the Green King. As they scanned the text, one guy bragged that they had absolutely nothing to fear with such a powerhouse on their side. Flash of a confident grin, the mighty warrior welcomed his fresh recruits and then asked the famous king to lead the charge. Before long, the squad stepped into the hunter's dense jungle maze. Thankfully, Yun used his unique blessing to easily navigate the correct path. Suddenly, bloodthirsty goblins with wooden clubs ambushed them. The sudden attack terrified the rookies, but with one clean strike, the king cleared The small monsters, they were making great progress. All thanks to his blessing. Then his eyes locked onto a level 5 kid who was completely green and clearly had zero real battlefield experience. This bracket was designed to keep the matches fair, but other groups definitely had seasoned veterans. Lying in wait, Commune realized they looked like total sitting ducks and barked an order for everyone to huddle up and hold their ground. Boom, a massive shadow barrier suddenly slammed down around them, trapping the team, but the hero just smirked, casually mentioning that they had some uninvited company. Suddenly, a massive horde of rival players charged out from the trees, ready to slaughter them. Without missing a beat, our cold-blooded hero cut down the lead attacker. But the remaining attackers swarmed toward the helpless rookies, resting his sword over his shoulder. The monarch calmly pointed out rule number 5, if 3 members die, the squad gets disqualified. Hearing this, the terrified attacker froze completely, paralyzed with fear as his ally stared over at Yooseong with. Despite the surprise, they had no intention of giving up and wanted to fight to the bitter end. But then the system suddenly announced that Team C was out. The stunned hero watched in silence. He watched this strange disqualification process, making him hold his breath. Sharp spears suddenly erupted from the solid ground, brutally impaling the entire enemy group. Immediately, a notification popped up stating that 2 players had failed the raid. This made the daredevil remember rule number 2, if a person dies here at the hands of the labyrinth, they can never respawn, even after it is fully cleared. Yet Een showed mercy, killing the enemy himself. The king's team then moved on. They continued on their path, unaware that a cloaked ninja was already stalking them from nearby. The spy realized that if he and his comrades killed Ka, his entire squad would be completely wiped out, so he decided to pass this information on to the others. Suddenly, the main character appeared right behind the assassin, calmly asking how long he had been resting there. The speechless assassin could only admit that he was actually a huge fan of the brave warrior, but that changed absolutely nothing. Smiling, the blue-eyed warrior replied that he already knew that, before asking where the rest of his squad was hiding. Soon, the exhausted ninja ran back to his comrades, shouting that he had successfully found another team, which instantly caught their interest. A small crowd of eager fighters immediately rushed toward the spot where the enemy group had been spotted. The scar-faced leader warned them that one of their rivals was highly dangerous, while the others posed absolutely no threat, meaning they had to coordinate to quickly take him down. But one tense assassin nervously asked if they were even going in the right direction, since it was incredibly dark around them. The fighters did not even realize that the massive jaws of a shadow beast were hanging right over them, teeth incredibly sharp. In a flash, the wary warrior with a scar on his forehead realized they had been lured directly into a deadly trap by a traitor. Moments later, dead ninjas lay dead, and Team E was out of the game according to the system. Soon after, Team D was also eliminated, having managed to survive for only a very short time. In the end, the fearless Kang Yukon received a sudden system notification confirming he had passed the seasonal update of the first maze. Massive achievement points were awarded to everyone on Team A, who rejoiced and thanked their hero king. They also received random blessing tickets, but had to choose one specific player to receive the rewards. After reading the grim warning that in case of disagreement, absolutely no one would receive anything, the crew tensed up, and what was worse, the system only provided 2 tickets per team, rather than to each single member. The brave king argued he did all the work, so the rewards should belong entirely to him, hoping no one would object. Suddenly, the newcomer, heavy knight armor, who had already annoyed our hero quite a bit, expressed his loud disagreement and intense dissatisfaction. This spoiled child demanded a ticket to turn a blind eye to what happened back in the tower. Hearing this, another angry guy shouted that the useless fool had not even lifted a single finger while he had actually helped catch the monsters. The insolent boy immediately hid behind his powerful father,